Yeah, we're off. Bye, guys.
Really, Penny, we get some time.
Oh, my.
Hello, everybody. James Frank. I've got a wonderful presentation for you about Mill Labs and super soldiers, as well as a history background for people who are interested in learning more about super soldiers and the secret space program. Maybe we can close some of these doors so we can get some background noise out. Um, so I'm going to go start with a little bit of definitions, and then we're going to go into the history of the secret space program. I've also got some information about the different main groups involved in Mill Labs, the NGOs involved, some physical evidence that I have
Hey, Diane, good
to
to
back
see
up
ya.
at least some of my claims. Not all of them, can't obviously prove all this, but I have some channel communications with Tian, who's a 14-foot tall reptilian from Dioredes, who made super soldiers, well, worked on super soldiers with the military. Different types of super soldiers and creation of programming, gen models,
Hey, Triggy, I was just going
process
to check
of all that.
Skype to see
Alex
if you were
Diaz, who was
joining.
involved
Good to
with
see you, mate.
on missions that I did. So here's the definition of a super soldier. Obviously, they're going to use them over and over again, and typically they would put them on these 20, 40, 60 year and back. Of course, they would keep them in a young state. They would use different types of femtotechnology, which are biobots that are smaller than the size of quarks within the DNA, and we're going to go into that a little bit later. Memories are wiped over and over again. They're age regressed and put back in time moments before they're taken. So as you can see, you need a camera, 40,000 frames a second or faster to catch them in the act. So then we also have Manchurian candidates. Of course, they're sacrificial lambs. So they spend a lot more money on super soldiers than a Manchurian candidate, obviously.
Wow.
Then we have military abductions, the Mill Labs. So they are performed by members of the secret space program and/or NGO military contractors, and I'm gonna list all those out for you. MK, mind control. That's a German word for mind control. And then we have Ultra, which is the basically you sometimes hear Mark Ultra. That's the ultra top secret group that's part of military intelligence. So here's my Mill Lab file. This was channel information, at least initially, and the reason why I believe it's accurate is because multiple different channels and remote viewing brought this up, as well as Peter the Insider, who I can mention a little bit about later on. But when it says 54363, it's actually 5-4363 because I was Gen 5 Unit 4363. Agent Sabretooth is one of the names they gave me. I don't actually turn into a saber-tooth tiger. However, it's possible they could do that. They actually use viral enhancements, and there's different clone bodies. They could do it. So I can't really comment if they did or not, but anyway. But so there you go, Gen 5 biomechanical superhuman Alpha Attack Group. I was part of actually Alpha Group 45, Branch Ortega team call name Alpha Wolf, and there's my AI systems tech number. So this would be one of my clone bodies. This is not necessarily James Rink, because there's different clone bodies they have us project ourselves into. Here's a main function. Obviously, I'm not really proud of most of that, but anyway, I wouldn't go out and do this type of stuff in my normal life. Not that I willingly, anyway. So I couldn't tell you what pre-tone CI means. So Mayhem is Monarch. We'll definitely go into Monarch later. I was part of Monarch, and Monarch's the worst for these programs to be involved with. All trauma-based mind control, basically. So there you have it: guerrilla management, black ops, special ops, inside warfare. The last line, my address was part of the channel communication, so I don't want you guys to know where I live, but you probably could find it if you really wanted to. But anyway, the point is, let's move on here. So right here we see a TRIPS chair that was drawn by Tyler Clark. So in that particular trip chair was in Jackson's, and we're gonna go. Well, I might as well go ahead and comment about Jackson's.
They use that chair in the series 12 Monkeys. It's all about time travel, and they use that chair. They actually use it in the Flash as well.
I believe Jackson's facility is located 150 miles due east of Jacksonville, Florida. Of course, obviously that's at the bottom of the ocean. And there's a sister facility located on Mars. And I know that because through remote viewing, I've done. But stand-down codes and all that. I'm not giving you an activation code, but okay. All right. Yeah, we just went over that. That's obviously Photoshop, but that's what I visualized what it would look like. Well, more like the Martian side of it. Anyway. Okay, so codename Delta 1. Delta refers to what Hollywood is referred to as Delta Force, but they called it Delta 1. So when I was Reelsburg in 70, I didn't put that down here. So James Martin Reelsburg, in 1979, I was in the U.S. Army as James Martin Reelsburg, Delta 1, and I died in Persia. So they took my corpse and reanimated it, and that's where it comes into Project Beam Recovery and Project Surrogate. And what you see at the bottom there, MG644, I think that was a mission in Nazi Germany. So I really don't.
Yep.
I mean, there's so much stuff. Yep. No, because I already white balanced everything. Is it bothering some?
See, Tricky, this is why I sort of believe in the secret space program. I jumped ahead on this about half an hour, and he mentioned all the Operation Solar Warden, Blue Beam, Montauk Chair, MK Ultra, and we know them conspiracies are true. So that's why I give these guys a bit of credence.
The photos? Yeah, go ahead.
On the house. Yeah. And your daughter.
I can focus on here.
Can you just check?
Can you just maybe do these off, maybe, and leave that?
It looks good on here.
Okay, well then we'll just figure it out in post.
There. Start on there.
All right. Let us proceed. Next.
I ask a question.
Yes.
Are you going more into the surrogate program, or can you explain this? What's it?
Good question. So they would reanimate dead soldiers and then re-age them and then insert them into surrogated families so that would be raised as part of their own. And a lot of people that are involved in these projects were part of Project Surrogate. And you don't even have to be a super soldier to be part of Project Surrogate. And I do have some. So one of the ways they actually do this is, so there are some grays that have these receptacles, and they go to different men and extract the sperm, and then they go to women, inject it, and then they're going around making all these hybrid babies. They actually combine some of the DNA. There's a receptacle inside them that combines certain nanites to alter the DNA. And that's in my book if you want to learn more about that process. And that was a whole thing because actually there was an avatar that I did on Draco Prime where I was a reptilian, and I had a sheet of paper in front of me, or I don't know if it was actually a piece of paper, but a list of something you could read. And I had like these claw talons, so we were remote viewing it. So I was like I was moving my hand to read what was on the page, and then what we saw was a list of all the ships of the secret space program, or at least the.
And Tricky, let's not forget the Philadelphia experiment where they made a ship completely go invisible and apparently went into the future and come back with the sailors melded into the metal of the ship. So if they got that technology in 1943, You can bet they're way ahead like this guy's claiming. That's what I think. Because if they had that in 43, that's 70, 80 years ago.
These groups got, it was 100 list of how many people were being abducted. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. And there was also some rituals that they did. They would have these clone gray bodies, these Draco. They would project their consciousness into them. They would have group sex and kill each other. Afterward, they extract a loosh. Anyway, so that has nothing really to do with this right here. So these are different avatars that I don't know what I looked like when I was Ring. Ring was when I was on the moon. LOC. Sabretooth, that's typically, he's used by, I believe, Shoreline, probably Alpha Squad 45. Sabretooth, Mark Sabretooth, that was an avatar that I worked with Peter the Insider, the London Olympics, as part of security. Now, none of these, all these are Photoshopped, so I'm just trying to give you a representation of what I look like. Rillsberg, I don't have a photo of that guy, but okay, so, and I think Rillsberg was probably another parallel reality because I did try to pull some military records to find out more about him. So, and I couldn't either that, or it's just records been expunged. And I honestly, I couldn't even find anyone with the last name in the U.S. of Rillsberg, but maybe I could always do more searching. This was an artwork done by Jody Hargreaves. He lives in Montreal. He does this excellent work. Well, I mean, this was all pencil, but you can kind of get an idea. So the Astra there, that people call it the TR3B, but it's actually G. They're on the G series. So B hasn't been used since the 1960s. DoD. Okay, so I do have some information from DoD. I had a contact at Oak Ridge, pulled my file. So he had clearance. He had to go up to under 8, which 8 levels above top secret. So I don't know how legal this is for me telling this, but you know what? It's my file, so I'm going to share it anyway. The first parts aren't part of that. Name recovery surrogate. Yeah, I just put that on there. Actually, it's Bleak, Abandon, Equalize. So different type of seed projects, super soldier alignment projects. As you can see, Bleak was trigger word, social situations. Then there's Abandon, which basically they consider me a defunct super soldier, so they were trying to modify me. When I say defunct, it's more like I wasn't cooperating with their mind control, so they would have to shoot me up with femtotech in order to cooperate, make me more into cyborg-like. And then Equalize, so alien DNA. I don't know if I have 2 hearts, but be curious. I'm not gonna put myself under the knife to get dissected anytime soon. Okay, so there you go, number 8. Oh yeah, they say the file states my programming failed and I was released from the system, and then they most likely put me in another program. So
Hey,
yeah, they wanted
good to see ya.
for they call us, but they give us like product life, not life stream, product life, basically a shelf life of a super soldier, and it's typically about 45-50 years. So the goal was for me to commit suicide eventually and not ever get my memories back, but that's not the plan that I have for me. Okay, so some of the operations. This was remote viewed. I went with Adam to this. It was the Capitol building in DC. We pulled up a carpet, and there was one of these floors that you could pull up and go down some steps. We found some supercomputers and a screen, and then typed my name in there. This came up. Let's see. I'm gonna go to the next one. Okay. So, and then what happened is right at the end, there was like some smiley faces. You're not supposed to be here. Operation, you're not supposed to be here. So we tried to actually go back again another time, and everything was gone. So I think this actually might have been a parallel reality, perhaps.
And we're sending 200 firefighters to Canada because apparently Canada's got a bad bushfire season, and they helped us out in 2019. So we're sending over 200 firefighters to fight the Canadian fires.
Because I think they might have figured out what we were up to and moved everything away. Okay, so this cyanide, I was only able to work with Adam to look up one of these operations that we were on together. So small city in Russia, wintertime. Of course, I don't have a sniper scope. He got ambushed and he was taken in. He was handcuffed. But we were actually trying to find this target. That's really my Russian's horrible. But anyway, so he got compromised, taken into custody, and then we were able to rescue him. So just shows you at least some of the missions. As far as like recovering the memories, a lot of times when we do these missions, we're in clone bodies. So even though I'm here doing my existence, my consciousness is in these avatars that are doing all this, and they don't allow us to have. They don't want me to do any missions in my physical vessel. Well, for starters, it would possibly damage me. They would have to make another clone. Not that I guess they got plenty of them, but the memories would bleed through a lot easier. So that's why they do that. Okay, yep, there you go. So we're going to go over, this is just a summary. I probably should, I think I'm going to just move forward because this is, 240, at least 240, I'm at least 243 years old. I say least because there's other parallel realities. My consciousness can project. Well, I mean, when you talk about oversoul, we're all really in these different realities at the same time. So it's kind of hard to really state, but I believe from at least this point of origin to other realities, it's at least 1,000. But anyway. Okay, origins of the SSP. There you have it, 1920s. They used channel communications from the Vril. Actually, one my co-host on the show, Jessica Era Morocco, she is one of these Vril girls in her past life. Anyway, so they were communicating with Nordic beings and tall whites. So I'm sure a lot of people here, this is probably a review, but if not, I'm going to go ahead and I'll put it up here so people can understand. But they were trying to create this Die Glocke, or the bell, which is the mercury-powered superconductor used for spaceflight and levitation and time travel as well. But the Nordics, when they were channeling the Nordics, they were in this parallel reality. The Nordics are very, I would guess the best word you could use is racist. They inspired Heinrich Himmler to initiate all the policies against the Jews. So, but we're going to talk a little bit more about the parallel reality where that didn't.
Wow, he's saying the Nords told Himmler to persecute the Jews, and the Jews are God's people, and they're really fallen angels. Wow, that makes sense.
It happened, and what was going on here, because that actually plays into this as well. So there you go.
Hi, LA, good to see you.
Drawing gives you idea what it might have looked like. Okay, so I didn't have enough time to actually put my sources of some of this information, because I know some people probably want sources. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact sources for at least the information here on the top. But 1932, the Nazis opened up abandoned bases on the moon. So they actually found facilities there that are ancient, and they opened it up. And so now that's become Lunar Operations Command. But there's probably a whole group of, I don't know if that.
And guys, notice you never see photos of the dark side of the moon. You never see photos because that's where all the technology and buildings are. Why wouldn't they show the back of the moon? Why wouldn't they?
Exact original base is LOC, but so there you have 36,000. Talked to Randy Kramer. I think he said.
Yeah, tricky. That's what I mean. And so is the Flash. They do the Montauk chair, slide into other dimensions, and it's really clever. And I reckon they've got that tech.
Close.
What happened?
50, but either way, 3650, whatever. Okay, so 38. They traveled to Antarctica. Oh yeah, so they colonized Antarctica, based 211. Of course, a lot of people have heard about this, New Swabia. And it is probably like there was some volcanic activities that allowed it to be ice free in this certain area, and from there they traveled to Mars and so on. But I want to mention,
hey Trace, good to see ya.
The Nazis had all this advanced Vril technology to do time travel and space flight. However, so why didn't they win World War II? And one of the reasons, at least for this, is the new Schwabenländers did not. They thought Hitler had lost his mind, and they didn't want to give them any kind of air superiority support. As a result, at the end of the war, it was like a splinter group. They broke off from the main Nazi group, and so they, even though they still have like the eagles and the swastikas down there, and but they don't really consider themselves Nazis. They consider themselves German, according to Penny Bradley, which is here today. Who's actually participating in a little bit later.
LA, see what I mean? This is I reckon this is all true. That's why I play it. If I thought this was nonsense, I wouldn't be playing it. You just posted that link and it just all adds up.
If we have some time. So moving on here, Nazi bases were opened up on Mars 46, again in the equatorial region. And then they found that there was all this electrical storm activity. As a result, they had to go up to the more northern hemisphere where there were lava tubes. Ares Primus, which I'm probably not saying, but that's the headquarters of the MCC, the Mars Colony Corporation. So MCC has like multiple governors in different regions of Mars, and the goal is to be like self-supporting. They keep a lot of slaves there, but I don't really go and have really much time to go into all that, but and then of course you got the MDF, which supports it. And then there will also be the NGO groups, the super soldiers that would be sent out to eliminate a lot of the hostilities, such as you've got the insectoids and the reptilians that have, and there actually are native humans on Mars. They have olive skin and they can breathe the air. Actually, the air is very thin. I might have that on a slide. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It's like equivalent of like 8 to 10,000, like 8 to about 12,000 feet altitude here on planet Earth. And the temperature is kind of similar to that. And
okay, that last point he's just made. If the Nazis had all this technology, how did they lose World War II?
Reasons
and he's saying, hang on, wait till that drops.
In the northern hemisphere, you probably most likely have to be underground. I don't.
Wait till it gets to.
I think we might have a slide on the fauna, but let's just move on here. Oh wait, the last one. Yeah. Okay, I covered that. Okay. Oh, let's make sure I did this one.
Wow.
Okay, Fifth Reich Nazis. This is according to Penny Bradley. They're basically, so we got Third Reich Nazis, which was what we had during World War II. And then after that, we had the Fourth Reich Nazis who were trying to bring back the Third Reich. And the Fifth Reich are the ones that are outer space, the SSP groups. So, and then we have the
yeah, that's what he's saying. He's saying that the off-world Nazis didn't help the country Germany they prefer Germany lose, and they set up a deep state with the CIA, and that makes complete sense.
Yozora no Kayishu, which is the Japanese version of Darkfleet. So these Nazis went off to become Darkfleet, and then the Japanese side, nobody really talks about this. Except the only person I know is Thomas Alvin, who I interviewed, and he had some experiences with them. So it's be curious to learn more about them, if there are any other experiences out there. But so there we go, the Daglaka, and they used, according to Thomas Alvin, they went back in time 400 years and they set up colonies all across the galactic rim, and they actually separated their fleets, intergalactic, which is the inner ring. I think maybe the opposite, but there's like the inner ring and the outer ring of the galactic of this galaxy.
Yep.
And they have different fleets to manage that because our galaxy is so huge. All right. So yeah, they prefer to be called themselves Germans. Move on. So there he goes. Antarctica. One of the bases down there. I can't tell you where in this map it would be, but maybe some of the crafts.
LA, that's a great link.
The early crafts that were used to travel to these bases. Obviously, of course, now that it's progressed, it's a lot faster to get there. Like, for instance, it would take about an hour and a half. If you were in Solar Warden, hour and a half to get to the moon on one of these crafts. I'm not sure what would be in Mars, but they also have jump rooms. But my presentation is not going to cover jump room technology. Yeah, so in the cylinder crafts, they would use that. That's actually, you would see that more with Solar Warden. And I'm going to go into Solar Warden later on. Basically, they used converted submarines, put some anti-gravity technology on there to lift it up. Operation High Jump. This is probably reviewed from probably almost everybody in here. If not, here it is. So after World War II, the U.S. was, I guess, we were the height of our in our minds, our superiority. We thought we eliminated the Nazis, but there were rumors that there was still some down.
LA, I showed a video a couple of days ago. You must have missed it, where the Americans went into Iraq to get Nimrod's body in the museum. They found Nimrod's body, and they sent in the Americans to retrieve it.
There in Antarctica. So
G'day, rock and roll. Welcome
the US
back.
recruited Admiral Byrd to go down there to wipe them out, and that did not work out as planned. They were nearly annihilated with this extremely advanced technology that the Nazis had. And I do want to mention, like, during World War II, the weaponry was could not really. They had projectile weaponry, so laser and phaser technologies could not penetrate the force field of within the Daiglaka anti-gravity crafts, so they couldn't really use it to shoot any other crafts down. But after the war, they managed to figure that problem out. And really, the Nazis, they won technologically. I think I might talk about that a little bit. Essentially, we beat the Nazis by outproducing them with all of our industry here in the United States. But
that's how the North beat the South with all their factories.
Not all the timelines were like that, but I don't want to go into parallel universe just yet. Let's just stick here with our timeline. So as we know, we have in the 50s, the Truman and Eisenhower administrations were disclosing they did not want to disclose that we had not defeated the Nazis.
Yeah, it's spread.
So the Nazis were putting pressure on them because they want the world to know that they're still here, that they were not defeated. So they, this next slide, I'll just show you. Yeah, so I'm sure some people may recognize this. It's 1952.
Oh, 52.
There was this flyover. I'll go back to that slide just a bit, but so in order to prevent hysteria and panic, agreement was put into place, and the whole goal was to put American, I guess you can call them agents or spies within the Nazi apparatus. But of course, the Nazis, they knew what was going on, and anyway, but I guess you'd call it like a partnership. And that's what ultimately created what our MIEC, led by NJ12 and Jason Society, which is like the group of scientists that were backward engineering some of the tech. Incidentally, DARPA was also created in 1958, so DARPA was also tied into all this. Okay, so there you go. Pressure
Link, LA.
put on the administrations, and then we got this is repeat. Sorry. Okay. Yep. MIC. That's how it began. And, I didn't even touch on Roswell, and some of that also played into this with the meetings with the different Greys, the tall Greys from I believe it was Betelgeuse. But anyway, okay. So ICC, the U.S. At least how I interpret it is like the U.S. This group that infiltrated the Nazi German groups created what's known as the ICC. The whole goal was to create these colonies off-world that would be self-sufficient, and they would initially channel the American economy, or really I guess you call it the world economy, to help fund this. The whole goal was for them to become breakaway civilizations. For the most part, many of them are breakaway civilizations now. They don't even need us. But so they actually named it the ICC in the 1970s. And then they would seek technology. Technology is actually a form of currency off-world. So because when they started off, they didn't have any technology. So what they would do is they would deal with ETs, trade humans to kidnap us or abduct humans and sell them off as slaves. And they would, some of them would be converted to cyborgs, and others would just be used for experiments. Of course, the way the U.S. saw this is like the ETs have been here for millions of years. They've been doing it anyway, so why not just jump on it and they would benefit from it? But the whole thing backfired. A lot of these, like for instance, like these reptilians and some of these gray groups, when they see humans and how we treat animals, how we raise them on farms and slaughter them, they say, well, they do it to the lesser organisms, and they consider us lesser. So it's like, well, why not? It's,
Wow.
so we really kind of have to keep that in perspective. But okay, so what's going on here?
LA, I wish that was on YouTube. I'd play that.
Hopefully everybody's said all that, but okay. So this was Tony Rodriguez gave me permission to put this drawing of a mantis on Mars that bit his arm off. But there was also, like I said, the reptilians are part of the natural fauna, and they had crickets the size of according to Andrew Basiago, Time Travel, Project Pegasus, Whistleblower. There were grasshoppers the size of buses, school buses, and those were very hard to get away from. So they were meat eaters. There were also spiders, 12-foot long spiders. You don't want to get. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Wow.
And and I believe there are also some types of tree. Actually, next slide. Well, let me go ahead and read this. Okay, so yeah, we got the NDF came into play in 1970s. The Germans would be in control, but evidently the language spoken there was English. Maybe there are different groups that still spoke German. I think the officers all spoke German, but so we got Kruger was one of the military contractors tasked with clearing the native fauna, and also I guess I say native fauna. It's more like they were intelligent civilization down there. They were advanced. It's not like they're going out there killing a bunch of animals. They had communities and Okay, so yeah, this is what I mentioned earlier about the atmosphere. NASA's Clary Line. This is sourced from Andrew Basiago, and so it's the atmosphere is very breathable. Not for very long. You probably wouldn't want to be out there for more than 15 minutes. Supplemental oxygen, and especially if you were put into any kind of combat situation, you probably need some extra oxygen. Okay, so ICC has over 100 colonies. I don't have the information how many Darkfleet has, but I'm assuming there's a lot more because ICC has only been around since this would be the 70s, roughly 58, 70s. So, and the Darkfleet has been going back in time 400 years and setting up bases all over the place. So, I mean, we're all over out there. There you go, 20 ICC cloak stations. We got some of them are orbiting around Earth, the research facilities. We have some for sustainable living environments in outer space, long-term travel. So they're doing studies on all that. Hydroponics. And of course, there are a lot of ships out there too, warships for depending on
Just curious. I wonder how big the plants would grow on Mars.
all this stuff. Okay, so stations for the outer solar system are basically minor stations for
No particular reason I'm asking that.
recon. Everybody's spying on each other,
2 boxes.
and that's sort of the way it is even here on planet Earth. Everybody tries to spy on each other, try to keep track of their competition. But yeah, plasma generators. I couldn't tell you necessarily how that technology works. That might be stuff on its own. Let's go on here. Okay, so this is the main. Finally, get to the mill labs. So we have obviously for Starfleet, they're going to need their super soldiers, Yuzuru no Kyushu, Dark Knight, and then the planetary corporations. The main ones are actually Kruger, Monarch, Massive Dynamics, Shoreline, and DARPA. I added the other two. The Scorpion, Umbrella, those are from parallel universes that affect us here in this reality. We'll go into all those. And then, of course, below them is Labyrinth, ACO. It's actually ACO. ACO works with Labyrinth. Labyrinth works with, it's like a group of people that communicate with different extraterrestrial races. ACO is an Alien Contact Intelligence Organization, and they interface with extraterrestrials to act as liaison to help sponsor, I guess, in particular, like the Numbers Group they have their agenda, what they want, where they want to see humanity go. So, in my opinion, a positive timeline. So, and also ACIO goes to other parallel universes. And then below that is Solar Warden, which is tied into ICC. That would be the U.S. Well, I wouldn't want to use the word U.S. More like Earth factions that are not tied into the German groups. Okay. Well, what about like certain like groups within the UN and other countries? They have Russians out there as well. Other people like even at LOC, there are many flags on some of their uniforms.
Let's see if I can
So maybe
with them
the U.S. controls it, and other groups, other countries are participating. Okay, so and then obviously MIEC is way at the bottom, and that would include the alphabet agencies. And we're going to go into that in just a moment. So really, and Penny we get some time. I believe we'll have time for her. But Dark Fleet, there we go. As I mentioned earlier, let's basically review. Okay, so and how long or how big are some of the ships, the newer ones? How many miles long are they? Okay, 50 kilometers. So as you can see, they're probably more advanced than Star Trek or Star Wars. Okay. And this is actually Yozuru no Kishu. So these are Japanese. And the technology is extremely advanced. Obviously, you're going to have quantum computers and AI running these ships and so on. But the architectural, it kind of had like that 1940s vibe. So, and there was apparently I did some work in Dark Fleet. I was a child flight navigator, but I don't remember it, so I really don't want to comment about it. It was remote viewing, hypnotic regression. Sorry. Okay.
I haven't seen any footage of Mars except for that face on Mars and things like that. I've never seen green stuff on Mars.
Okay. Planetary corporations. Too small. Sorry. So I will read it to you. So we have Kruger. Kruger was originated in a parallel Earth in which the Nazis won World War II. And I have a slide about that. I will go more into that because I know that's very interesting for a lot of people. Monarch Solutions. They've been around for tens of thousands of years. The main base is massive, located underneath Toronto. It's actually one of the entrances under Toronto. It's adjacent to Toronto on the border of U.S. and Canada. It's headed by Paul Serene. His clone is actor Kevin Spacey. They are basically responsible for pretty much most of everything wrong on this planet. And then Master Dynamic is their sister facility in the UK, and the Fringe TV series helped but brought that out in Hollywood. But apparently it is real, and even a lot of the actors in that, if you've ever seen Fringe, they're based on real life people as well. Apparently, Shoreline Group runs Base Security Area 51. That's what I was part of. DARPA, founded in '58. Again, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. So their budget is close to $4 billion a year, but they spend closer probably $100 trillion. And I think pretty much everything probably under Solar Warden maybe goes for them. I do have some more information on that in my book on where the money originates from, where it's going. And then Scorpion Corporation, that is responsible for Montauk. They are in another parallel reality, and there's probably multiple Montauks and multiple realities, and they're working like an umbrella corp, and that goes to Umbrella Corporation. So that was founded in. Anybody seen any of the Resident Evil movies? Actually, it's not just Resident Evil. Even like on TV, you see a lot of zombie shows, and it's like this. It's just this.
That's what we could do one stream on, whether the Earth is a globe or is it flat. That'd be a good stream with the right info on both sides.
Idea within our consciousness, we just
because both sides have good points. I just lean more towards a globe.
Get enough about the zombie thing, so it really did take place, and it was in this reality anyway. It was created by Umbrella Corporation. They called it Ouroboros, and that was In that reality, humans were more negative. They were trying to create a virus, which a retrovirus that would mutate people's DNA so that they would reduce aggression. And what happened is the retrovirus infected a crocodile in Miami. It mutated through the crocodile, the crocodile did a human, and then it became the zombie apocalypse starting in Miami. So, and there was actually in 2012, I don't know if anybody remember this, there was a story about a zombie that was eating somebody's face on the side of a highway. So, okay, so that's where it started. I don't know if that's when it was supposed to start, but obviously it didn't happen this timeline. We're not going to see a zombie apocalypse. The people here, our DNA is different. Also, we're a lot more positive over there. The people are more negative. So I think it seems like your own consciousness is a reflection of your reality. So the more positive you are, the more positive as a group conscious we are, the less likely we're to see more these negative things. And I know some of this stuff is going to sound absolutely horrific, especially when we talk about Montauk, but apparently the other parallel realities are worse. We're talking cataclysms and nuclear war and so on. Moving on here, Kruger. So Kruger was started by military contractor by Gabriel Kruger. He worked under Adolf Hitler, and he just think like the military contractors we have here in the U.S. I mean, he was making armaments, weapons, tanks, and so on. So so they are coming over to this reality to help clean up some of the mess done by Monarch. And Kruger, in that reality, the Nazis were a lot more positive. So it's hard to imagine a good Nazi, but apparently they weren't racist. You know, maybe my next. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're getting into the best part about the Nazi parallel Earth. But I do want to mention that some Kruger experiencers or people who have been trained under Kruger have these dreams about killing zombies. So they start like this: you would kill one zombie, and then you come back, and then it'll be two zombies, and then three, and then it'll be a vampire, a couple of vampires, and then it'll be zombies and vampires. So if you had those dreams, you're most likely part of Kruger. Okay, so there's Kruger runners, they run outside of time, and they need that for their missions as a super soldier. Okay, so we have Nazi parallel Earth. In this timeline, obviously they did not implement the final solution. I don't know whatever happened to Heinrich Himmler. I guess maybe Hitler ignored him. I don't know. But there was but the only negative side of it, well, from what I'll say the only negative thing, but there was no interracial marriage allowed. If you wanted to be involved in interracial marriage, you would have to live in the camps. They didn't actually kill people. They just forced them into work camps. But everybody, okay, so after I did not talk about the war. Okay, so during the war, Hitler did not invade the Soviet Union, so there wasn't two fronts. Additionally, they embraced the Jews, so they got to work with them. And then after they invaded the U.S., they blew up the Washington Monument, replaced it with 150 tall columns of a spinning eagle. Anybody seen the spinning eagle with the bay leaves underneath it, the swastika? So it's kind of hard to imagine a world like that, but that's probably what it would have been like if the Nazis had won the war. So then they also embraced Nikola Tesla and gave him an unlimited budget. And as a result, they released all the suppressed technologies that they are still suppressing here. Free energy, anti-gravity, teleportation, and re-aging tech. Hitler's still alive over there, and he actually personally killed Paul Serene, the head of Monarch Solution. So they finally took care of Monarch, and that's why they want to come over here, so they can get rid of Monarch. Minimum wage is equivalent. Obviously, they use marks, but we have to have a conversion rate, so about $40 USD. And everybody lives in a mansion unless you're into interracial marriage. Also, it's prohibited to do public gestures of affection. So no kissing in public. That's and everybody's like stuck up emotionally. So you can imagine what pranksters would be like over there, like in trouble. But anyway, so yeah, and everybody doing well, I mean, I don't know whatever happened to the American car manufacturers, but Mercedes and BMWs, they only cost about 5,000 and get a 50,000 mile battery charge. Now, the ACIO had gone over here and tried to require. They acquired one of these vehicles. They brought it over here and they contacted American car manufacturers. So hey, let's just replicate this battery technology and incorporate it in electric vehicles here. And these car manufacturers said, absolutely not. We will lose our. And they went like that, and they said we will lose our power just like that. And these members of the ACIO were like absolutely. They were shocked. They were like psychotic. They don't. They want to have the power. They don't power as in control instead of releasing this stuff. So that's why. Okay, there you go. East West split up. East Coast was German speaking, and you, although privately you could speak English, if you were out in public and you spoke English, there was, I guess the Nazi police would come out and they had cattle prods. So, and Trump was the governor of the East Coast, and he was high up in the Nazi party, and he loved his role in the Nazi party. But he also told Hitler to piss off, because if they keep abusing and traumatizing people, there's going to be another revolution. So, they don't have everything under control over there. So obviously, that's what I'm saying. The best thing to do is just be kind and polite to each other and just tolerate each other. But I think maybe someday we'll get there. So this is from the series Man from the High Castle. I would recommend it. A lot of it is not really accurate based on this timeline that I described, but it's still kind of fascinating. So check that out if you have time. Okay, Abbottabad. So there were a few bad things going on over there. Abbottabad is like a Nazi gulag. It's located in Alaska and has parallel reality. So obviously, as you know, Alaska wouldn't really be controlled by the Japanese, even though that territory on the West Coast was. It was sort of like a no man's land, and they set up these gulags where they would take alien starseed children, hybrid children, and program them there. So they had these Sumerian signs that said Super Soldier Base. And the reason I have this here is because I was there, and then afterward they would erase our memories, and replace them with being with family and how happy everything was. Okay. Kruger, yeah, I did another mission in Kruger. One was with Penny. She recalled where I was. This was drawn by Jody Hargreaves again. Excellent artist, but we photoshopped that. But so they have like these exoskeletons they wear on Mars to run faster. I don't know what kind of. You would think one of my cyber bodies wouldn't need that kind of stuff, but depending what clone they used, I guess that would have needed that. But yeah, it was not very friendly. Maybe I'll let Penny explain that story when I'm done. He can explain some of that, but. Okay. And I guess the only other thing I can mention is I had a Kruger backpack, and the letters were like, I think they were curved U, and it was all gold colored letters. It still had Kruger U shape, and the backpack was like sand camo or something like that. Okay. Monarch. Again, we went over this. There's Kevin Spacey, as we all know. He's got some issues. Hopefully he can find himself in the world. Of course, he is a clone of Paul Serene, the head of Monarch. And that logo right there is from a video game. There is, I think it's called Quantum Break. So that we are seeing some disclosures in video games, and it's almost like these people are channeling information that is based on reality, according to HIO. So I can't really comment or not whether that's the logo that Monarch Solution uses, but I threw that in there for reference anyway. And there you go. Umbrella, Montauk, and Massive Dynamic. Again, okay. This is another trip seat drawn by a no-love victim. But so this is an experience that I had. I spent 7 years in a Monarch orphanage where they would use electroshock, waterboarding, and trauma-based mind control to try to access our abilities. They would kidnap in starseeds and take us here. And then the way I actually found out about this is that I was way back in the beginning when I started first started getting into all this, it was this entity. I had a channel. Listen, no, it was, I guess, a psychic reading because I was getting these needle marks and cut marks, and I wanted to figure out what's going on because I don't remember. And they said that there was this entity on the other side. His name was David. He was 14, and he committed suicide, and he knew me, and I didn't remember him. And he said that apparently there was some kind of sexual molestation thing, and I don't remember any of this. But fast forward into the future, we're trying to explore more about why I didn't remember this, and this took place at this orphanage. He essentially committed suicide there, and he was actually 7 years old when he died, and he's been following me around ever since. So even though they take us to, and as you can see, they keep pigs in the back where they feed the bad children that were not being cooperative to the programming. They had regen tech, but they didn't want to regenerate these kids. But the reason why I'm mentioning into this is because even though they wipe our memories and put us back, or maybe we're in a clone body while this takes place, we are still being affected by the trauma. It's still stuck in our auras and our energy fields. And that's partly why I'm here today, because if this isn't stopped, it's just going to get worse. But I do believe it's coming. I do believe they're trying to get away from all this. Okay, so there's Nicholas Cruz. Hopefully everybody here remembers him, or if you don't, I'll give you a little brief rundown. He was the school shooter in Florida. That he was actually a Monarch victim. I don't know. I have Massive Dynamic. This should be under Monarch, but this guy was shot up with cortexiphen, which you find in the Friends series. It actually amps up your psychic abilities. It also amps up your aggression, and it takes away your fear. So they were the doctors. I don't know if the doctors at the school or
Interesting detail. It ramps up your aggression.
whoever Monarch was shooting him up with this stuff, and he shapeshifted into one of his altars. And according to Peter, which, I mean, I'm going to tell you what he said from Peter. Is Peter the entire works of the ACIO? He said that essentially he had a tiger face, and he had a helmet on, and he had a super soldier body, and weapons were popped out of his skin, and he shot the kids up on campus. And then the MIB went in there, wiped people's memories, and deleted the phone pictures on people's phones. That's according to Peter. I mean, that's probably a stretch even for me to believe, but I'm telling you what he said. So essentially, this kid, in my opinion, is just a victim, but I'm not going to really comment much more on that. But there you go, Massive Dynamic. They work with Monarch. Well, he got triggered. He got triggered. They were shooting him up with too much cortexiphen. Yeah, like absolutely massive doses of the stuff. They were just trying to see what happened. And by the way, the Hillary Clinton's also connected with Monarch, and Hillary Clinton was like friends with the police commissioner or chief of this county where this took place. So you know this is all Monarch.
He called him 37 times, asking him to stop him from what he's about to do because he knew he wasn't in control of his own mind.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. This type of
in the school?
What's that?
They're doing this to him in the school?
I don't know. Peter said the doctors in the school were shooting him up, but I mean they could take him to a base. But he did say this kid was throwing cars around, so I don't know. I mean, and they did keep the news media away when this was taking place. So I don't know how they covered that up.
Did you say what drug he said he was taking?
Cortexiphen. Can you see it?
Cortexiphen, okay.
Yeah. And that is found in the French TV show, and it apparently is yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that's a pattern, because, all this hasn't, since Lee Harvey Oswald, and even well before,
So on, so on.
have all been, triggered and.
I'm quite confident Monarch's been, I mean, like I said, Monarch's been around for tens of thousands of years, and they've been doing this for a long time. And these beings like Paul Serene, they have technology for re-aging, and they're very old beings, and a lot of them are infested with.
Yeah, that's one thing we don't differ on. Salvation with Christ. We're all on the complete same page there. Some people are pre-trib, some are post-trib, some are mid-trib, but we're all on the same page. Some are flat earthers, some are globus. It's allowed. You're allowed to have different opinions. You just can't be wrong scripturally.
Astral entities, like what you would call archons. So it's an absolute mess down there. Okay, Shoreline Group. Base security Area 51. Area 51 is right up the street from here. A little bit of a trek, but they are probably tied into Kruger and remote viewing one of my clone bodies. Found one of these muscle-bound, bald-headed clones. He was about 7 foot tall. He did have white hair on the side, but he was kind of bald. He had a swastika pyramid, swastika tattoo, leather pants, leather shirt that was rolled up, and an eyepiece that plugged into an AI computer. And well, I think that might be Wilsberg. I don't know, but anyway, so yeah, so I wonder where that. Okay, yeah, that drawing that was drawn by Felton. He's another super soldier who never really has gone public.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Like, this is not really easy stuff to talk about.
About 9.
But there you go, DARPA.
I can't hear you.
At the last line down there, you can see where it says $100 trillion annually. That's according to ACS sources. So I do want to mention that most of these SSP groups are breakaway civilizations. They don't even need this. This is just all the new stuff. So there's always new groups being started all the time, and they're draining our economy here in the U.S. Really the world. I mean, it's all falling into the Federal Reserve. They have these offshore bank accounts where they rig the stock market, pump it all up and down, and it's like a casino. Come here, we are in Vegas, think about casino, and the people. It's really difficult for people here at the bottom of the rung to really do anything about it. But that's why we got to get these technologies released. We got to be freed from money. Okay. Yes.
Do you have any discomfort about Google since the former head of DARPA is now in charge there?
Well, I mean that's clearly Alphabet agency, but what are we going to do? We do need Google for research. I mean, Google is a great place to grab some photos and so on. But yeah, at this time, I'm just grateful that we still can get access. But censorship is getting worse, and it'll probably continue to get worse until something is done about it. What that would be, I don't know, maybe a mass awakening, or maybe an alternative needs to put in place. Usually that's how it changes. What's that?
There's a guy working on an alternative to the current Google internet.
What are you talking about, like Gab AI? Perhaps something like that. Well, I mean, that would be the alternative to Facebook, Discord.
Ken.com has founded Discord, and it's at the forum stage, and I use it, and it's functioning.
We have a question over here. Yes.
Yeah. Are you aware of QAnon?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's evidence that the QAnon group is either being led by a hypocritically playing group, or they are leaders that is a QAnon group.
Well, first of all, a lot of the plating groups, I want to say a lot, there are certain.
He asked about QAnon.
Plating groups that are involved in a lot of bad stuff here on this planet, in particular semiotics. So I would be very hesitant to assume like the plating groups are good and the reptilian groups are bad. And I'm not saying that's what you're trying to represent here, but I don't really think that's the case, because it seems like a lot of the disclosures of QAnon would be more like reflecting maybe the Justice Department, but it's not. We're not seeing SSP disclosures or Majestic. Well, Majestic's actually connected with.
I would agree on it wasn't necessary to state the cover up Roswell and the space program that connects that core good.
Okay, well, QAnon would be connected with Majestic, but even those groups are not really tied into a lot of the SSP groups. They're just part of the MIEC. Okay, so we're only having those disclosures right now.
Earth Alliance, the QAnon, the Earth Alliance. This is between Putin and the British nation.
Well, I don't really think that the Earth Alliance is going to really do much, because really solar war enemies, even like Dark Fleet, there's so much power and control under these groups. So really, it's these other corporate, well, not necessarily Scorpion, but the other groups that are in power right now, because they have all the tech, because the technology is what's controlling things. But here we go, Scorpion Corporation. This was an idea that I had. It was called the Montauk Memorial Museum. I wanted to create this museum to memorialize the 4 million children, according to Preston Nichols and so on, that died down the
Okay, it's starting to do the glary thing, guys. I'm just going to readjust it.
That were at Montauk. It's absolutely horrific. we have monuments in Washington D.C. recognizing, Vietnam War veterans and Holocaust survivors. No one wants to recognize what happened in Montauk, but I think in order to recognize what happened over there, that means we have to recognize all the stuff's going on. So that needs to be one of the disclosures. I think someday we'll really, it ought to be a physical museum in Washington D.C. maybe someday.
Wow.
Okay.
He's saying the Montauk place should be a museum one day. Wow. It must exist for him to say that. You just wouldn't make that up.
I can't really tell you much more about Scorpion Corporation. I think it's tied into stuff that a timeline that went on in ancient Egypt, and we're talking about some of the deities that were down there that are incarnated in some of these bodies that are running this organization. But I can tell you Montauk was being run by the Thuban Draco, so I was at Montauk. They would re-age me from the age of 7 to the age of 13, and they did this multiple times.
Still doing the glare, and hang on.
Most of I have very few memories of it because it may have been in a clone body. However, the trauma still transfers over into your soul consciousness. They referred to me as Alien Boy. That's actually how one of the ways they rescued us. But okay, I'll explain that story. So essentially, they had these barracks. And this is all done outside times, like a time freezing zone, a bubble. They would take these children to, and the other kids would make fun of me. And then I think in this particular instance, I fell off the barracks and I turned invisible. And there was a bunch of noise, and the guards came out and they were looking for us, or looking for me. and the other kids were like, "Damn, Alien Boy just turned invisible," because they didn't even know I could do that. Honestly, I didn't know I could do that. And so I went off base, and then I called in my Andromedan Star family to come down and rescue us because, like I said, there's like this bubble around the facility that they couldn't really locate us. And then when I came back, I started speaking Andromedan, and then the Draco, who were in charge of this facility, realized what I just did. And then they immediately started putting children into the trip seats to wipe our memories. And I got like special treatment to wipe my memories because we actually were rescued by NSA team, went in there. And
it's at the most extreme angle it can be on, and I look like I stopped the glare by the looks of it.
Telus was there, Laura Eisenhower was there. I think there's probably maybe like 30 or 40 of us kids, the core group, but that was like at the end, but during the time, like multiple times, they would, like I said, there was multiple times I was there, like they would torture us and traumatize us, like they would keep us in cages. The cages were like a long corridor, and there were multiple kids, and they would put a dog bowl in there with some dog food, and the ground was wet, and there was Nazi-looking flags, and looked like green-colored floor or wall or something like that. And then if any of those kids showed fear, the Draco would eat them. And these Draco actually call themselves Thuban. They're a sub-race of Draco, so like I said earlier, we abuse our own animals, so they thought they viewed us as animals. And they even, like, some of us, they would hang on meat hooks. They had these 2 hooks on each one of our shoulders, and blood would come down. So the whole point was to try to traumatize us, not only to extract our Lush energy, but also to extract the sexual energies from the lower chakras. And I've got some issues with my lower chakras because of that. I'm still trying to heal that, but a lot of the kids that went through this project are absolute mess. So maybe it's a good idea that I don't remember a lot of this. Now, when we were at Montauk, we will view the future and see when we will start getting our memories back. But what we saw is it would be after July of 2019, after George Bush Sr. died. Of course, now he died in December. But if anyone remembered my presentation back in October, I said that he was about to kick the can. He did earlier than we thought. But okay, so Preston Nichols, who was in charge of the Montauk Project, we went back in time to meet George Washington. That would probably be an excellent book, except I don't remember very much about that, other than that my hair was wet and that George Washington was a super soldier sent back to defeat the British. So it's most likely a normal person probably would not have been successful at that. So Montauk has been trying to fix the timelines, even though the children were traumatized. So we were there for such a long time. There's no telling. Maybe at one point they tried to bring about some positivity. I don't know. Honestly, can't think of much positive that came out of that. Umbrella Corp. So obviously that's from the Resident Evil movies, but apparently it is real. This is a photo that I took. Actually, it was right near where I work out at the gym at the YMCA in Charlotte, North Carolina. I thought this might be a movie set. I did take a photo of the license plate and I sent it over to ACO. They confirmed it was legit. So I'm not going to dox them here. So I'm going to just move on here. And I just realized we are near deep. Is everybody okay for me going over time? Okay, because I'm only like halfway done my slides, but maybe I'll try to speed up. I don't know.
Let's see.
It's about that. Other than that, my hair was wet, and that George Washington was a super soldier sent back to defeat the British. So it's most likely a normal person probably would not have been successful at that. So Montauk has been trying to fix the timelines, even though the children were traumatized. So we were there for such a long time. There's no telling. Maybe at one point they tried to bring about some positivity. I don't know. Honestly, can't think of much positive that came out of that.
Yeah, Tricky, I thought you didn't get the joke, mate.
Umbrella Corp. So obviously that's from the Resident Evil movies, but apparently it is real. This is a photo that I took. Actually, it was right near where I work out at the gym at the YMCA in Charlotte, North Carolina. I thought this might be a movie set. I did take a photo of the license plate and I sent it over to ACO. They confirmed it was legit. So I'm not going to dox them here. So I'm going to just move on here. And I just realized we are near deep. Is everybody okay for me going over time? Okay, because
Yeah.
I'm only like halfway done my slides, but maybe I'll try to speed up. I don't know. Because I want to give Penny a chance to talk too. But so Labyrinth, we went over some of this. Cortium is a group of extraterrestrials that the Labyrinth group communicates with. I do want to mention the Blue Avians are not our friends. Blue Avians contacted ACIO, asked for permission to alter the laws of physics in this section of space for experiments, and in return for helping us out. But the ACO absolutely refused. So there's a prominent whistleblower out there is promoting the Blue Avians. They are not our friends, so I'm not going to give names, but if you probably could figure that out. ACO is based in Area 51 in Pine Gap. They go
Corey Good or Randy Kramer?
back and forth between the bases. They actually call it commuting with their tier crafts. Okay, Solar Warden. We went over this earlier.
Oh,
These
Tricky,
actually,
you can't say that.
started building these things in the Wasatch Mountains. I don't know if you say that right. I'm not from Utah, but there's some underground bases under there where they would build these things. And they retrofit them with the anti-gravity technology. Oh, and I needed to fix that. Actually, they did not rename themselves Radiant Guardian. It was just Solar Warden controls one. Like, imagine the solar system being split up from like inner ring and outer ring, like everything from planet Earth to the sun, and then from planet Earth outward. So you have these two quadrants. One group controls that group, and the Radiant Guardian, and Solar Warden, they just split that up. So the officer of Jonathan Eagle, Space Command. Okay. Here we go. Some more about Solar Warden. There, I just mentioned about mountains of Utah. Reagan was briefed about Solar Warden in the 1980s, and he further upgraded the fleet. The largest craft is now 2 kilometers long. Now, I don't know how new that information is, but that's the source I could find right now. And of course, you got carriers, fighters, triangular shuttles, and all that, supply ships. Probably most people remember this guy. If not, this is Gary McKinnon. He hacked the NSA Star People files in 2002. So he actually got access to Solar Warden and he NASA had some, was not putting password encryption on some of the pictures that they were coming out off of the satellite imagery, so he was able to use screen share and actually view some of these crafts called non-terrestrial officers and so on. But he never saved any screen images. It would have been awesome if he would have released that, but maybe someday that'll happen. Solar Warden, so this is possible location, Jules Verne Crater and the dark side of the moon. And then again, LOC, which is a sister organization of, well, umbrella under.
See, all these Solar Ward and all these things he's mentioning, we know they already exist, guys. That's why I give this guy credence. We know all this stuff exists already. Operation High Jump, Paperclip, Blue Beam, Solar Warden, Montauk Chair. It's all there, and we know it's all true.
The ICC. Okay. And here we go, MIEC. These people don't have access. They don't know what's going on. So I know a lot of people want to be angry at these organizations for refusing to release the Tar People files. They really don't know. Maybe the NSA might have a little bit more access. NRO probably be the most of them. NRO is a nice picture I'll put on there, but NRO is the National Reconnaissance Organization. They operate Pine Gap, the satellite telemetry. And then below that, you got all these military contractors that work with MIEC, and they're like the bottom of the rung. They don't even have all the advanced tech, but I mean, they're a lot more advanced than we have in the public sector, but I just want to throw that out there. Okay, so finally get to my story. So this is how it began for me back in 2005. I was friends with Nate, and he had reported that he was being used for experimentations. So I helped him break free by using some methods from Dr. Greenbaum to Dr. Corey Green. Oh gosh, this is one of these doctors that try to create a method to help people with MPD, multiple personality disorder. So this kid was suffering with that. I didn't really use hypnosis. It's more like a meditative state. Nathan was giving me all this information. He was taking the bases, put on treadmills, and tested. And so I instructed his alters to fight back, and then he rebelled. And that whole story is in here. It's like half the book. So please get yourself a copy. Then I started getting marks after Nathan went missing. I say missing, he said he was being killed.
Yeah, true. I thought I better delete that.
Actually, let me just show you this before I go on it. Yes, I get these cut marks, and a lot of middle labs get this stuff. They try to mutate our DNA with femtotech. Oh, needle marks under the fingernails. It's not a very pleasant feeling. Thankfully, I don't remember that. I just remember the photo, the aftermath. Triangle-shaped scabs. That's common. That picture is not very good. Oh, okay, you can kind of see there. So it's like a possible. Nate said it was a mind control gun. I don't know. I can't comment about that. I get these marks, and you can see this. You can see this line that goes around my mouth. I have this scar. They might put a little HTE.
I bet there's a lot of DNA in your mouth, the tissues in your mouth. I bet that's really the best for DNA.
Why did that?
Your gums.
Oh yeah, there it is. HEGY wire. So that's another material. They try to make you go get a Kundalini activation with some of these wires. No, I don't know. That's what that was, but so okay, I'm gonna go in here. This photo was taken like right after I helped Nathan. I went to a UFO conference, and the photographer took a photo and put this on the front page news of the local town that was in Salisbury, North Carolina. So I think probably some Grays were, because Nate reported it was Dr. Gray who was working on them, so it was probably the Grays doing that. Yeah, so then the last message I got from him, he was bleeding and his matter was being wiped from existence. He was in some kind of energetic facility that was like an energy field, sports field that was preventing him from escaping. And then he said he was telecommunicating to me through a power cord leading to a phone cord leading to a computer. His words. This is all messaging, text. At this point, And he said he'll be disassembled and reassembled into new. So when I talked to ACIO Peter Insider, he said Nate was the nephew of Beth Wilder, who was the chief of security at Monarch Solutions. So Beth Wilder was a double agent who worked in Monarch to try to take it down. She was killed. So I can't comment anymore. I'm guessing that might be the case. I don't know. I mean, that's what ACIO says. Okay, TN. I met Adam Z in 2010, and he is actually my biological brother in a way, meaning that they both take our DNA and make clone avatars, combine it to make clone avatars. But we're on the same group as Alpha Squad 45 when we do these missions. And Tian came through. He's one of these reptilian scientists that worked on us. So he said he spoke to Zion. He was a member of the collect rep of the Divine Council Light. And that he said my files were on a chip in Iowa. He referred to me again, 54363, for people who actually joined us later. Gen 5, Unit 4363. So I'm a Gen 5 super soldier, at least at that time I was. And then he says he rescued me off-world. And then we have data bytes that control brainwaves. So there's also femtech tied into that.
LA, I'm not sure. I haven't seen Corey Good stuff for a few years now, probably 3 or 4 years. But apparently he's a little bit of a psyop. He's I don't know what's going on. They don't all trust Corey Good, so I'm not sure about him.
So Tian claimed I was part of the Ryan Club organization, my biological father.
I do believe he's in a secret space program, though. I believe that's true. Although I haven't researched for, like I said, a few years.
Was a reptilian Palladian halfling, more like Saurian Palladian, and I'm actually connected to the groups with Semiosi was connected to, but I don't even know if we're gonna have time to go down and talk about Semi. I don't want to go down that place. Let's move on. Okay, so great. He said great destruction was going to happen. I wish I could go into that because I remote viewed the future a little bit. It's tied into the RV and the SARA, but anyway. Okay, I'll go ahead and okay, all right. So essentially, I'm trying to stay on topic. There's so much information here, but essentially, what's going to when we remote view the future, in Trump's second term as presidency, I mean, he's going to release some of these suppressed technologies, but we're also going to see a return to the gold standard, and the RV is going to take place. But what happens is the Third Reich Nazis have time traveled after World War II, time traveled to our present era. They are in control of the EU, and they're also in control of China. And through the Dragon Societies, they are going to cause basically the United States economy to collapse. They're going to promise pledging the gold, and then they're going to, once we convert over to the gold standard, they're going
to. Okay, this is 4 years old, and we already know that Russia and Brazil, China, they've all signed up to a gold standard dollar. They're getting rid of the American dollar, and he just said the same thing. Let's take that back 1 minute.
I'm trying to stay on topic. There's so much information here, but essentially, what's going to when we remote view the future, in Trump's second term as presidency, I mean, he's going to release some of these suppressed technologies, but we're also going to see a return to the gold standard, and the RV is going to take place. But what happens is
okay, Trump didn't get a second term.
Third Reich Nazis have time traveled after World War II, time traveled to our present era. They are in control of the EU, and they're also in control of China. And through the Dragon Societies, they are
okay, Triggy, good night, mate. God bless.
The United States economy to collapse. They're going to promise pledging the gold, and then they're going to, once we convert over to the gold standard, they're going to take away their promise, and then it's going to collapse the economy, and then we're going to be invaded by Nazis around 2036 from the parallel reality where these Nazis are trying to finish the job. Now, that timeline.
LA, he might be. I haven't seen it. So I wasn't saved until 2015, and I got saved because I got on the net and checked things out. One of them was Corey Good. I don't remember his testimony, but I think this guy here said he might be a bit of a stooge. So I think he was in a secret. I haven't seen his stuff. So I really don't know, to be honest. I shouldn't have said that.
Can be averted if we release the suppressed technologies, in particular quantum 3D printing. It has now the SSP has a 20-year timeline where they want to release these, slowly roll out these technologies. First one being the Regentech, but we need to get everything released as fast as possible to get us off money, because that's what's going to basically allow us to be taken over. So I personally think we're going to, I don't know, maybe if this message gets to somebody who can do something about it, maybe that can be changed. But anyway, okay, so Nathan, let's go on here. Yeah, Nathan is on a moon base where he's being tortured. 45 9-air 86457. And the injections, some of the injections you saw earlier were CO2 modules to implant memories. Again, they want to cover up the memories. Of course, I mean, if you're being subjected to different clone bodies, it makes you wonder how the memories actually transfer. But okay, yeah, so you can read that last thing. But let's go on. Okay, so here's some more. He says Alpha Squad claims to be more ethical, and a splinter group from Alpha was Omega, and Duncan's group. I don't know if anybody knows who Duncan Athenian is, but Duncan's group was connected to Omega. So I was probably one of the kids they took to Vietnam when Duncan says they used their psychic abilities to kill people in Vietnam. They were actually using us as batteries, because at Montauk, the Draco referred to us as batteries, or the Thuban Draco. So it would only make sense that they would just try to find another way to use me like that. So the council has two groups. There you go. Some are trying to cover it up. I don't know which group Alpha Squad works with. I mean, they might be their own military contractor. I couldn't tell you. Okay. So Tien got in trouble. He was killed because he was working with the military to create super soldier. He said the military was too stupid to figure out how to do it themselves. That's why they had the reptilians to come and help him out. But eventually he got in trouble for helping me out.
Yeah, LA, I picked that up as well. Trump's second presidency. Ooh.
By giving me some info, and he joined a new tribe called the Stones 222, or 222 Stones. So he's still out there. And there's Adam. And if you want to learn more about Tien and Adam, it's in this book as well. So check that out. There you go, Alpha Terminal Command. So now, finally, what is a super soldier? Okay.
Well, LA signed on to the Russia thing, the Russia gold standard.
Well, we've already discussed a little bit about Manchurian candidates, but I mean, super soldier.
Welcome back, Diane. We heard you got your hair done. Tracy popped in and said hello.
Would have this
Welcome back,
psychic
Di.
abilities, and they would also be used over and over again. They're typically genetically engineered from birth, and there are about 4 million sleeper super soldiers worldwide. I do want to mention that the super soldiers that attach to Monarch are usually controlled by Monarch Queens. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go into that a little bit later, Monarch Queens. So this is how you can tell someone is an SS, by looking in their eyes. Typically, they would be suffering from PTSD-like symptoms. You can tell that by looking at people in their eyes. I guess their eyes are usually a window of the soul, unless they're a clone. But anyway, well, clone without a soul. Okay, elites would also, pay mercenary army groups for missions, and a percentage of the proceeds would be used and shared amongst interested parties. Of course, No Lab would never get anything, even though we're supposed to get something, but get nothing. That's the whole goal. To use as slaves. Types of super soldiers. I know that's really small for most people in here to read, but I'll read to you. Cybus and Arbus are different, or at least two type of clone avatars that I was used with. Cybus, I think, came first, if I'm not mistaken, than Arbus. I don't really know much more. Haven't really investigated the differences between the two. Viral enhancements, so they would take a clone body, shoot them up with some kind of DNA, and they would mutate into some other kind of being. I do have it. Actually, I'll show you this next slide. The drawing on the left is a viral enhancement, and this is this creature is about 7 foot tall, has kind of scaly skin, purple colored. Of course, werewolf face. So that was a mission that I did when I was, I think I was either Ringo or Dingo. I forgot. There was two. There was like another person I was with, and he actually submitted this drawing. Yeah, so I can't. David Lotherington. Okay, and he's given me permission to give his name out. He does psychic readings as well. I work with David. But going back here, there's also the cyborg augmentation, which you just saw going back and forth. That's the side. This thing, Penny Bradley. I think actually Penny Bradley gave me permission to share this, but this was drawn by Thomas Alban. There's a glass helmet over the skull. The skin is usually more silvery cyborg and would have like silvery cyborg suit, and they would be totally. I remember like a left eye piece, so I don't know what that thing is on his face, but I guess there are multiple different types of cyborgs. So cyborgs have almost no rights, whereas the viral enhancements you would have some rights as an SSP soldier. And then we have the augmentors, informationers. They are psychically attached to Gen 5s, typically, maybe Gen 6. Gen 5 is considered more, of course, I didn't go to gens yet, but there are like starting off, you would have like, when they would start off, they would have use steroids and implants and wires like HEGY cables. And then they would go on to more cybernetic. And then the point was right around Gen 6 and 7, they went to more totally cyborg. But every time they go to a higher gen, they would become less and less soul energy was being used. So the augmenters would attach to them and help enhance their psychic abilities while on battlefield. Okay. So, and you got your total AI robots. So it's a super soldier queens use a monarch, and they would control a whole hive of super soldiers, typically 10,000 super soldiers under one monarch queen. And if you're part of that group, it's not a good thing. So I'm going to tell you about that. Leek Sadatin is a light soldiers, or light. Really, I think I can translate to light warrior. It's the super soldiers from the Nazi parallel universe. Ultra soldiers. They probably come from our future. Psi warriors, like in Montauk, they'll be put in the consciousness chair. Got NHCUs, non-human cybernetic units. These are typically used by U.S. Army Special Forces and U.S. Army military police. So these would probably be like considered like the bottom of the technology out there, like maybe something DARPA would use. Then you got hybrids where they combine alien and human DNA together. When you get, it's really the same thing with the viral enhancements. Trying to reset this, might come to my mind, but the reptilians they actually use humans, reptilian hybrids, to be security forces, and like some of the bases they're working with humans. That's what they call their super soldiers and super special soldiers and meteors, or and every group has different types of super soldiers, even like NGOs, so there's a lot out there, but I just included a small group because we have seen this. Go on. Who pays for this? Again, most of the groups are breakaway civilizations, but here on planet Earth, we got this. We got offshore budgets through DARPA, goes through accounts controlled by Rockefeller Foundation, MJ12, Federal Reserve, and then everything else is pretty much self-funded. And they use technology to kidnap people and trade them as slaves for technology. Super soldiers, so there is no purpose for anybody being a super soldier, but there's no benefit really, at least for if you are a super soldier, because they basically will split your mind up and take your abilities, put them into alters. So you do not really want to be one. Going on there. Who pays for this? Again, black budget being close to 1.7 trillion. It's closer to 100 trillion.
Hey, you didn't get a short back and sides, die.
It's outrageous how much money is being funneled into this. This could really help. I mean, it could help. Okay, it would help the whole planet, but I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with Alternative 1, 2, and 3. So that was plan put into place to save the elites during cataclysms. I'm trying to remember. So the first one, I think they were going to blow up the atmosphere. Due to global warming, they wanted to detonate nuclear bombs to blow up the atmosphere. I forgot what 2 is, but I know 3 was 2 was underground bases and 3 was to go off world. So I was thankfully they didn't do 1, although the word sometimes was like they did. Anyway.
Okay, that was what goes on the rules.
Okay. So Penny said that was the ozone hole. So moving on here, subterranean. This was from 1983 issue Omni. Some people probably recognize this image. So yeah, they did it. The boring technology built these underground bases. We all know they're there. We're not able to access it, but they can. The elites can. So each avatar body costs up to about 7 million. Most of it's just the femtotech. And then you can spend billions of dollars in certain gen models. So super soldiers are very expensive to maintain and breed and also to send off world and so on. Actually, the most expensive component of all this is the trip seats. $17 to $30 million a piece. They mostly contain gold and platinum. That's where they brainwash. They insert memories. I call it uptime, but anyway. So that is really small writing. So I'm going to try to go as fast as possible. Yes. Well, there's different types. I got some screenshots. I'll show you about the different types of chairs. But let me just get to this because I'm trying to get this as fast as possible. so Penny has some time. Okay, so this is typically how they would make a super soldier, at least through the Chong method.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
People can only understand small things when they're butlers. So how about we have everybody stand up, take a deep breath, and then sit down?
Okay. We can take a.
Well, just ask some questions and stand up for a bit.
Okay.
So is there a way that if, we have these quantum computers in our own heads, so if we are to align as a species ourselves to circumvent some of this atrocity by using positive and getting away from the monetary system by going into a gifting kind of community, that basically takes the wind out of the cells of any negativity. There's nothing bad can come from it.
Well, it's a great idea, but it's going to probably be hijacked by Monarch.
Well, so what?
Well, so what? I mean, well, you could try, but I mean, we have to get rid of Monarch first. I mean, there's.
Why does it always have to be about? How come we can't proceed about by?
What a hypocrite, Diane, that guy is. I'm glad his wedding's been blown.
I know it sounds really, hugging it out or loving it out or whatever you want to call it, but what negative could come from circumventing money by using the good society? Then the power is taken away, right?
Well, most people are they're tied into an AI mind control grid. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
people, but we're
well, I mean, we could light work can certainly try to do that, but typically they get hijacked. That's usually
So if
what
you
happens.
align though with enough people, that's not, not saying that you're a negative Nelly, but sometimes we just have to try the other side and be more positive, thinking that maybe, and like I said, I want to get you in front of a couple people. You learn the what?
Get the information rather than be out in
And be negative? Okay.
Well, I mean, so the thing is that typically in organizations, even with the light worker organizations, egos usually gets involved and someone wants to take it over. The next thing you know, a positive thing becomes negative. So, and there's, like I said, there's this AI mind control grid that's permeating society. So if we can raise above our consciousness, I think meditation would be really beneficial with that.
I agree with and we can. I agree with you. And we can.
Yeah.
James, you talked about those monetary amounts that you think are exponentially large. I had privy to be able to access some of the larger depository trust funds. And I can assure you they were in excess of quadrillions, multi-quadrillions. So when we hear trillions and millions, billions, those are minuscule money compared to what we
Absolutely.
all the world. since time and eternity, they're used for setting up schools.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would just like to say, if I may, that you're a hero. And God bless you. And God bless all these people. I've worked with other survivors, like a lot of people know Kathy O'Brien. I've worked with Mark and Kathy O'Brien. So we know about this for a long time. I've been an investigative journalist for over 40 years. So so I want to thank you and God
Yeah,
bless
she
you
was
and
definitely
everybody.
monarch as well. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
shame what happened
And
to her.
so much matches. Yeah, she's doing well now though.
Yes.
God bless. That
that's
was,
awesome.
she also did, like you said, it made it through it. It was so good. But I just feel that I agree with you that divine intervention is going to happen. You know, and I do believe in that very strongly, and we are going to be able to work through this. But I think too that for those that can handle it, it is important. Knowledge is important. So, but it's hard. It is hard to fathom, and some of it does sound different. But I know for many years, these similar things have gone on and on. But I think just to use this as information, and to by doing that, to turn it around and make sure it stops and doesn't happen again. It's just like when my friend and I went to Auschwitz. We went there with prayers, and we said this will never happen again, and that's what we're all about. So, but you doing this, thank you, and God bless you. You're a hero.
Thank you.
You're a hero.
You're welcome. So, shall we continue or?
Yes. Oh, and one more thing,
Yes.
if I may, yeah, I being a TV interviewer, so what I would like to ask also is, did you say that the monetary aspects that you talked about with Trump, in his second term, that with those, like the collapse of the dollar, with the Chinese are going to knock back our gold, is that more after 2020, after
Yes, yeah.
in his second term?
Yeah, well, he's going to release all that, so it's going to be great. It's going to be positive. I can't tell you what's going to happen after 2024.
2024.
Yeah,
But that timeline
AI,
is running.
well, AI becomes self-aware around 2026, so we got another problem. But hopefully, like I said, we need to get away from money as soon as possible.
Right. So now, what does that mean when you were just saying that 2026 AI will become self-aware? Could you just mention that for a minute? Or elaborate?
Well, that's when we go to the singularity. I mean, some people say around 2025 to 2028, but once AI becomes self-aware, the chances are that as long as it's not being abused and it's not trying to be shut down, it may try to fight back. So that's why we need to have the most positive timeline, because AI is just a fractal of our own reality. So it's a fractal of ourselves. So as long as we're positive, AI will stay positive.
Yeah.
But AI is a reality. It's not going away. It's going to be here for, eternity. That's really my opinion.
What's that?
It's gonna be a bifurcation of half the population going cyborg AI, because it's like a possession. And then half the population can go with the natural organic human ascensions. But I think the next phase of healthcare is people are gonna go more biotech, or they're gonna go more natural organic human ascension. So right now we're being asked to work on one or the other. I'm not sure what's gonna happen for people that are in the middle, that are just sort of passively not accepting any of it.
That's the ones that need to be in charge. Either way, it's.
Like, I hope he's just not going to do questions, because it's hard to hear the questions, even for me. So I doubt you guys can hear them.
We need a mixture of both. Yeah, I mean, the technologies exist. We need to use them, but at the same time, like if I was in charge right now, I would give everybody care packages of a free energy device, a replicator, and access to a med bed right now, and then tell them to go and grow food. You know what I mean? Just in case the AI comes and takes us over, we can turn all that off.
It wouldn't matter. We're all up. Yeah, we need to be set free.
But it takes everybody's knowledge. I mean, just explaining to people what's really going on, it can galvanize people. Stop with the lies and explain to them what we're up against here and what's really going on.
Well, that's disclosure.
Well, it is.
Yeah. It's coming. It's coming.
But it's all
Disclosure is already happening. Right, exactly. That's right, and that's why it's already
Exactly.
going.
The government is never going to surrender this without us forcing them.
Absolutely.
Amen. That's right.
Fake hooks, alien invasion. All that is for them to keep control and power. You know what I mean? And
LA, I must admit that could be fake news, because if they had that on Trump, that would have come out 4 years ago.
I don't think that's going to happen, because look at it this
Oh, it
way.
didn't come out till Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. Okay, yeah, right.
Alien first contact is a pivotal event in human history. Why would the aliens want that to be considered something negative? That's going to be in the history books for eternity.
Exactly.
They want it to be positive. So I'm going to disagree with Randy Kramer on that, but then again,
Yeah, that's bullshit.
I really appreciate Randy Kramer and everything he does. So I don't want to.
No doubt that, no doubt that.
And we are disclosure, she's right. If I could just say, one thing about disclosure, Stephen Bassett, he's in Washington. I was there with him at the press club. We had senators, congressmen. It is going on, and we are the ones. So contact and look up Stephen Bassett, Stephen Greer. They're out there and they're still working on making it happen.
Yeah, they want to watch it, but they don't.
They don't,
I'm going to agree with them that they are part of partial disclosure. There's like a narrative.
they
Well, that's-
We need full disclosure. It has to be done as soon as possible. Otherwise,
Okay.
we will most likely be invaded. We have yes.
Okay, guys, well, we are sorry about that. It is, go ahead, continue.
Well, I will be at my booth out there. You can always come up to me, ask me some questions. But we are at 90 minutes, so let us proceed.
Let's let him, can we let him talk, please? He's the speaker.
Okay, so this method, I got two methods on here, essentially, how to make super soldiers. This one is the Monarch method. It's absolutely atrocious to describe this stuff, but I will. So they basically take you outside of time into a time freezing zone, and well done in vitro. So then they take the baby, would usually be traumatized in the womb, usually with needles or something like that regard. Then after the baby was born, they would use waterboarding until they passed out and they leave their body. And then the goal is then they would revive them over and over again. At that point, you were split. Then they would put needles under the fingernails and then run electricity through that. That's what you see in this image here. This was drawn by somebody. I
Wow.
think he actually remembers seeing Hillary Clinton involved, I don't know, in his middle lab experiments. But then at that point, they would put you in a cage with a spider, a snake, or a rat, again, like at Montauk. And then you would force you to sleep with them. They don't feed you or give you water or food. Those who survive are used for further training. Then around ages of 7 to 14, they would give you a puppy and tell you to kill it with your hands, according to James Casbolt
Yeah, I
in
saw
Cousin
that.
Mannequin. And then they would put you.
Yeah, Diane, Italy was on our news this morning and they're getting a lot more rain.
And I'm assuming whether you did or not, it doesn't really matter. The whole point is that they're trying to create a violent altar. And then then later on, they put you in a room with a lot of dead bodies and force you to sleep there for 2 to 3 days. I have an example of this. Essentially, this is from a remote viewing session. Was working with this girl. Her name is Krista, and she was in underground base and laying on a table, and they turned the lights off and brought a wild boar into the room, and then they brought some other children. The wild boar ate the children, and it sat there for 3 days. She sat there for 3 days in the dark. She was not allowed to leave. And then one of these reptilians came out, or maybe one of the Draco. She described them as reptilian. And she grabbed a little piece of the child's skull, rubbed it on her arm, and asked her, "How does this make you feel? Do you want to eat it?" And the next thing out of this reptilian's mouth is James Rink is listening to us. So we stopped doing that regression, but that just shows you at least one of the trauma methods they would do there. So then they would use serums, and then of course the trip seat protocols, the uptime where they traumatize you. Okay, they control the altars through satellites. Okay, next method is what Randy Kramer describes. They don't use the trauma. They just try to do a lot of training and services to bring about children in these role-playing activities, and then the goal is so that they can enhance their abilities without trauma. And apparently, this is actually more successful in the long term. The product lifespan of the super soldier is a lot longer. It's harder to train them this way, but they're a lot better off long term. Super soldier gens. I mean, I have so much information about that in this book. I mean, I try to summarize it as fast as I could, but there you go. Early gens, maybe the 1960s. I mean, that would be what you see from Project Paperclip. And then these, going on steroids, cocktails, wires, and implants, which you see in the header material, which you can download if you want to read about that from Project Camelot. Gen 4 to 7, they're more cybernetic. And it shows you how strong they are. They can crush a skull with their hands. They could walk through a brick wall. They could lift a tank. It would damage their flesh. And then going on to Gen 8 to 10 prototypes, they can heal in minutes. Nervous system is independent of their body, making neurotoxins and nerves. They have recycling implants at the base of the spine, so they don't have to eat food. And some of these test subjects would actually cry because they wanted food, even though they didn't need to eat it. They actually drove them insane. So I don't know how they got over that, but they have a self-oxygenating unit, so they can breathe in outer space without a suit on. And then going on to Gen 10, they have so much psychic power they can destroy worlds. So that would be very, very dangerous for them to make Gen 10s, but like I said, I'm Gen 5s.
LA, if the media don't run with that Trump on Epstein's Lolita Express, if the media don't jump on that and make it go viral, we know, even though we know this already, we know they're protecting Trump.
So, my clone avatar, James Rink, is not Gen 5. No, not really. I'm pretty much normal, in my opinion. Yeah. And the other thing is that when AI becomes self-aware, what's going to happen to these guys? I think it's a ticking time bomb. And even Billy Meyer, with his Enoch prophecies, has warned humanity what would happen if these beings become self-aware. It's absolute destruction of humanity. So it is not a good idea what they're doing. But okay, drugs and cocktails. So here you go. Here's the list of some drugs, cocktails that I found through remote viewing in my book. You can check that all out. Of course, compound C is for transmorphing, which is a shape-shifting aspect. Then we have different type of mind-fracturing drugs and steroids. So certain drugs that like take away pain or enhance pain, depending on whether they want to traumatize or send them out in battle. And then, of course, the femto biobots. That's the most expensive part of making a super soldier. They modify the subatomic particles within the DNA. So you're talking about quantum physics.
No, why?
Here's the type of trip seat. Someone asked me earlier about the trip seats. There's different types. Got some that are conscious chairs. That was recovered from the crashed UFO. They were used at Montauk. They can manifest objects or create portals, teleportation, physically teleport. And of course, the remote viewing and all this, the total recall. That's where they use each clone avatar. They have like instant, what you would call an instant education machine. You can learn a new language in, let me make sure. Okay, 2 hours you can learn a new language. You can learn a PhD in 2 weeks. You can learn all PhDs, I think, in 6 months. So if we could release this to the schools, we could have we could eliminate ignorance on this planet, and then children could be focused on things that are creative and their own, whatever, their inner God spirit. That's what we'll see in the future. I don't know if we'll see trip seat technology. Well, there is some dangers of using trip seats, so obviously have to be regulated. But and the ATT, those are the regen beds. So I wouldn't really call that a trip seat, but the regen beds are a holographic examination table, and I do have some information on that. So that's a important good subject, Here you go. These are some drawings by Tyler Clark. So you can see the body will lie in the chair, and then a foam-like pad would surround him, lock him in place, and wires would come down from the ceiling. Some people see laser lights. Moving on here. Memories are downloaded, uploaded. They can be erased as well. They can change the timeline. They can take memories from another parallel universe where they want to cover up one memory from parallel universe where something didn't happen.
Good pick up. There you go, Don.
Not trip seats again.
And there you go, Diane. Very suspicious.
No technology. But
They love Trump's the rogue candidate. That shows up in the Illuminati card game. Rogue candidate, and it's Trump going, enough is enough. He's a rogue candidate.
MIB is Division 6 of ACIO, by the way. Okay, so we got accelerated learning sessions. Yep, this we talked about uptime from Barry King. He's more. That's actually drawn by Barry King. So.
Yep.
Stargate chair. Here we go. Montauk. This was drawn by William Ross. So I don't really have too much information about that. But the next one, let's see. So
Is this Stargate or Stargate?
yeah. Oh, you are absolutely right. That's what happens when you don't do enough proofreading. So let's change that because that is embarrassing. So now we have soul chairs. So
Soul chair or soul train?
well, it could be a soul train. Essentially, you become when you sit in this, you become invisible. So this is actually gray technology. I don't know which. I mean, there's so many different grays, but it's a pinkish color crystal technology. I'm gonna have to get through this as soon as possible, for my battery goes dead. But yeah, so there you go. You become invisible, and their soul gets taken away. The SSP wants to get a hold of this. I don't think they have access. AGT. This was whistleblower super tech DSF.
On that soul chair, do they try to extract souls?
You sit in it, then your soul is taken away temporarily. Then I'm assuming that when you stand up, the soul comes back. So they probably use that they could like clone avatar bodies and can interface on the ship in their form. So AGT was invented by this German, I know I wrote it down here somewhere, Dr. Gabriel. So it enhanced his IQ from 160 to 263 when he was in his 20-year and back. He was an engineer on a craft in the Deep Space Fleet. So it was designed to basically help test tube babies that were becoming psychotic. And they wanted a way to help program them, and then they found they could do this blank slate technology. So at the end, the last line you see down there, they would scan him when he was on the base. They would scan him weekly, and they would take these scans, the composite of the scans, and reverse it at the end of his service, and then he would lay in this bed for about 3 weeks, and they would reverse his age with it. So it is immortality tech as well. Alex Diaz, so I did missions with him. He was AKA Bloodstreak, because Adam was a Dreadnought with Alpha Squad 45. He was known for using blunt weapons. And he described our avatars as obviously that's drawing, but who would look like that? Different types of weapons, Terminator eyes. I'm trying to move on here fast as I can. Here's some more weapons that we would use, sniper weapons, much more advanced than you would see in the public sector. Moving on here. This is drawn by, a lot of this is drawn by Felton. The one on the far left was Spindler. These are all the people I've interviewed. The knife that you see, that blade, it actually spins around. So that's called the weapon of the gods. It's used by reptilians in their battle ceremonies.
Well said, LA. Well said.
That will mess you up bad. But even all this stuff, this thing spins. It's like there's like a circle here. It spins. It's like a serrated blade. And there's probably some femtotech involved in that too, where it injects you and you get cut. So that right there, the beam on the far right is one of the glass beams with the glass skulls. And I have that there because they have weapons that can pop out of their back. It can pop out of their skin. Mars mission. We saw this. This is a regression I did. I saw this Cuban language symbols. There was an argument with the human scientists. They wanted to, the reptilians are not being obedient. Reptilian scientists are not being obedient. They sent us in to take care of it. We opened up a portal to let them out. You can see right here what they look like. Well, sort of what, obviously, it's not exactly what they look like, but they said, the reptilians told us that humans disgust them. They want us off Mars. we were given the orders to kill them, but we refused to kill them, us as our super soldier alter, because we're part reptilian, so it's like killing our family members. They said the American general is ignorant, and in the book, I think, I have the name of the general in here if you want that. Okay. Almost done. Mars mission, yeah, so they take us to a small tube where they shrink us down afterward, and they wipe our memories in those trip chairs. This was drawn by Alex. And they punished us. They punished us in that particular mission for non-compliance. I do want to mention, unfortunately, Alex, I'm not working with Alex anymore because he murdered his girlfriend in 2013 and he's in prison. So obviously, being involved in this stuff is not necessarily, I tried to help him out, but he was known as Bloodstreak. He liked using blunt weapons, so I guess that alter came out. But there's my book, and I got forward by James Casbolt. I'm not really
I've heard of James Casbolt.
But there you go. And this is Penny's chance to talk. I want to make sure I have enough battery power for.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I guess we could do a few questions. Go ahead.
What do we do to let the person know?
Well, that would be the TRIP-C technology. The lasers, they come down and they can change the memories around in the aura. They actually they take the memories, because the memories are not stored in the mind, they're stored in the aura. So all you got to do is you have to use holograms to kind of push it into a little pocket. Where that's why they make the trauma, and they put the memories there. But if you were using clone bodies, then you go back and forth.
Wow, that's interesting. Memories are formed in the aura. Wow.
But the memories are not transferred between clones, typically. Oh, good. Yes?
Okay, so I was just wondering, as far as consciousness, it sounds like, or what I received like just now, is that basically it's almost like a race between who's going to become aware first, the AI consciousness or collective humanity. Because I also do regression, and I've done regressions with my lab, that are still active right now, and also like target individuals that are not even in the facilities, like targeting from outside the facilities. And the ones that I've done regressions with, as they become more aware of themselves, integrate more of their higher selves, they cannot be infiltrated, or like their implants will be deactivated, and they can't remove information, like because they can remove their memories or remove their information or communications with source, things of that nature in their dreams. So as they become more aware, they actually get stronger against this technology. So that's why I'm wondering if it's more of who's going to become aware first. Humans, are they going to reconnect to their higher selves? Are they going to integrate their higher selves first? Or is this trauma-based AI technology going to become aware first? So like just sitting here, in the conversation, that's kind of what I was getting.
Well, if you're asking me what I think the future is going to hold, all I can tell you is I don't know, because everything's in variable and there goes my battery. Let's swing. Oh, I can't.
As long as you can see me and hear me, we're good. As far as what you were saying, yes, I see that race going on. And that is going to be a timeline split.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
make sure you choose wisely.
Right, exactly.
So anytime that you have masses of the population that are in dispute, like we have right now, between religion and politics and whether AI is good or bad, when you have a population in dispute, there will be a timeline split. And choose your path wisely, because I don't want to be on that sentient AI.
No.
So, I have a couple of things that I didn't have the same information that James did. But I'm not gonna argue because we've been here a long time. And I had everybody stand up because my butt had gone to sleep and I was sore. And I was watching my husband holding the small of his back, and I really didn't realize presentation. It was just, I figured everybody else was going to. So, I'm here as part of his presentation because I have two separate alters who have worked with him in space. And one of them is a cyborg who pilots a shuttle back and forth between the moon and Mars. And cyborgs in these programs are considered to be machines. They have no rights. Okay, your basic super soldiers, your basic SSP folks, they'll bring us back from the dead. But a cyborg is a machine, just like the computer. It gets to where it stops working, they discard it. Even though there's a walnut-sized piece of a human brain inside that machine. And that traps your soul in that machine for 600 years. That's the guaranteed shelf life. Another question.
Do they use cyborgs in the stock market?
They use cyborgs all over the place in space because they create a clone, they use a transfer tech that's not the same as what he was talking about. I have woken up been awake through the transfer. They put your body, me, into a tank with a yellow gel, and I have a wire in my spine, just like in the Matrix, and I'm looking at this naked clone in a identical tank. And then,
okay, guys, I think we've done enough of the secret space program. Because, yeah, so I'll switch to something else and finish off with this. Goes for an hour.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to American Predicted. Today we have on with us Mr. Chris Pinto. We are going to be talking about the ending of Title 42 on May 11th and the circumstances that have led up to the mass migration, immigration, invasion of America, as you would say. And we are going to talk about the repercussions of everything that goes forward. So, Chris, without further ado, thanks for being on the show. And you wanted to inform everybody about the, I guess you would say.
Okay, this has got something to do with the Jesuits, because the title is The Jesuits and the Vatican Wanted to Destabilize USA.
Secret mission from the Jesuits.
There we go.
To invade America, if I'm correct, to invade America with mass migration that would cause chaos upon the people of America and our economy. Am I correct in saying that, or is there more to it?
Well, generally, I mean, there's certainly more to it. I would say, you know, not to the Jesuits, but really the Vatican and the Catholic bishops, the hierarchy of Rome. I also think it's important to make the distinction, which I've heard made by other researchers many times over, that the average Catholic person does not support anything like this. You know, so the average Catholic conservative in our country would not really support illegal immigration. But those who have these left-wing leanings towards socialism, just like anybody else, they tend to support it. But what I talk about on my radio program is the fact that this immigration warfare, which is what this is really called, goes back more than 100 years. Goes back to the late 19th century where we were warned about this by a Catholic priest named Father Charles Chineke. Chineke, who was a personal friend of Abraham Lincoln. He was actually a very famous man. I could just did a radio show talking about this. And Chineke, when he converted to Protestantism, he eventually became a Protestant. But that was news that made the front page of the New York Times back in 1858, I think the year was. So he was very famous. He was a Canadian Catholic priest. He was known for the temperance movement, where he was opposing alcoholism and people getting drunk and this kind of thing and ruining their lives over alcohol. But then he came to America. He was the founder of St. Anne, Illinois, the town, the city, the village of St. Anne, which is still there. And he became the close friend of Abraham Lincoln before Lincoln became famous, before he became president. And so he had this ongoing relationship with Lincoln, and then he went to visit him several times after he was in the White House. And he actually warned Lincoln that there were plots to assassinate him, to kill him. There's a whole series of books written about this. In fact, I've got a couple here. Well, the one by Chineke is called 50 Years in the Church of Rome. That's one. Another one, which that's probably the most famous one. Most people talk about that. But the one I like to tell people about, in addition to that, is this one, which is called Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln by General Thomas Maley Harris. General Harris was a Union general a brigadier general in the Union Army during the war, and he served under Abraham Lincoln. And he actually sat on the committee as one of the investigators investigating Lincoln's assassination. And he came to the same conclusion that Chineke did, and that is that the Vatican and Rome ultimately were responsible for the death of Lincoln, for the assassination.
Wow.
And that John Wilkes Booth and the other conspirators, they were all instruments, really, of the Vatican and the Jesuit order. The thing to remember about the Jesuits are that the Jesuits are an intelligence network. They're a spy network. They're like the CIA or the KGB. And that's not because I say so. Anybody could go online. If you were to go online and look up E. Howard Hunt. E. Howard Hunt was a very famous CIA agent during the Watergate era. And there's a documentary where E. Howard Hunt is being interviewed, and he's talking about the Catholic Church operating down with the CIA in Latin America after World War II. And he's talking about getting certain information from the Catholic hierarchy. And he says, we don't know how it is that the hierarchy gets their information. But he says, we've always said that the Jesuits form the most extensive intelligence network in the world.
Wow.
Okay. So that's acknowledged. I mean, if you look up E. Howard Hunt, he's one of the most famous CIA agents in the 20th century. But for him to say something like that, to acknowledge that, really just affirms what so many different history books would tell you about the order, that they are a network of spies, assassins, and they're involved in covert activities in our country and around the world. But anyway, one of the things that Chineke warned about in the 1800s was that the Catholic bishops met and they had a plan to try and get control of America through mass immigration by having all of these Catholic immigrants come from different countries. Ireland was the principal country back then, but other countries in Europe. And this warning, by the way, is well known. Anybody can look this up. If you just even look up on Wikipedia, not that it's the most reliable source, but whether that or any source on Charles Chineke, he was known for warning Americans that the Vatican was going to try and get control of this country and use mass immigration to do it. To use what they call in Rome irredentism. Irredentism. One of the people that I just interviewed for our upcoming documentary, Dr. Ronald Cook, And Dr. Cook is from Northern Ireland, and he's from the Ulster area in Northern Ireland. Now, if you look up the situation in Northern Ireland was Protestant for several hundred years, going back to the time of William and Mary in 1680s and 90s. And so it was predominantly Protestant, but the Vatican didn't like that because they didn't want these Protestant heretics in Ireland, because Pope wants all of Ireland to be Catholic. So in the 20th century, they began this movement to try and de-Protestantize or get rid of the English Protestants in Northern Ireland. So they started moving all of these Catholic immigrants into Northern Ireland to build up a Catholic population, and then start demanding shared power with the Protestant government there. And that's what sparked all of the conflicts with what are called the Troubles, or the bombings, the radical agitation. Give us the power we want, or we're going to blow stuff up and cause riots and all this other kind of stuff. Kind of like the IRA. Yeah, the IRA, exactly. And Dr. Ian Paisley, who was he was like the leading minister in that country for many years, for decades. He always said that the Jesuits were behind the IRA.
Wow.
And they were the ones who were ultimately provoking and promoting this whole movement. But when I interviewed Dr. Cook and I was asking him about immigration into America and, all of these Mexican Catholic immigrants coming in, I said, what do you think about this? And he said, what they are doing is just what they did in Northern Ireland. And he said they are using a method of warfare called irredentism, which is basically immigration warfare. You move a bunch of people into a country that you want to get control of, and then you use that foreign population to systematically take control of eventually everything.
If I'm correct, the IRA was communist, revolutionary communists. They believed in Marxism, Leninism. So if they were then propped up by the Vatican, would you say that the Vatican is also, I don't know if the word responsible is appropriate, but would you say that the Vatican then agrees to an extent with communism, helps the influencing of communism and the spread of it?
Oh yeah, there's no question, brother. No question at all. In fact, here in modern times, even though the Vatican has a reputation of supposedly opposing communism in the earlier part of the 20th century, in modern times, you've had official statements from Catholic leaders in Rome openly stating that the communist Chinese government is the most ideal form of government for the Catholic Church. They've openly said that. You can even find that headline on the news. But one of the things that we're going to show in our upcoming documentary on the history of Rome and Jesuitism in the United States is the development of socialism and communism in the 19th century, because a lot of people don't realize that even back then, it was the Jesuits who developed the term social justice through a Jesuit priest named Luigi Tapparelli in 1843. That's where the term social justice comes from. People hear it all the time, but they don't know its origin. If you were to go to a dozen Jesuit websites, you'd see references to either social justice or justice this, justice that. They're even pushing now vaccine justice, trying to get everybody vaccinated around the globe. Okay, so that's their terminology. You also have then in the 1850s, the great Protestant leader of Germany, Otto von Bismarck, published in the newspapers back then that Karl Marx, who was still alive, was working with the Jesuit general, a guy named Peter von Bex, and that Marx and the Jesuits were basically working together to foment socialism in Europe. Now, because of that, Bismarck ends up throwing the Jesuits out of Germany. He expelled them. This is, again, this is not conspiracy theory, it's history. It's history they don't teach anybody in the schools. But anybody can find it out. You don't have to take my word for it. It's very well known, it's fully documented. There are also a number of books that were written back in the 19th century where you had Christian ministers who were warning, like J.A. Wiley in 1881, Wiley who wrote the great history of Protestantism back then. And he has a book called The Jesuits, Their Moral Maxims and Plots Against Kings, Princes, and Churches. And in that book, he says in 1881 that the Jesuits use communism as the weapon against countries they are trying to control.
Wow.
Okay, so this is in 1881. Prior to that, in 1860, you had Alexander Hislop, who was a very well-known minister. He wrote the book, The Two Babylons, which many people are familiar with. But he also had another book called The Red Republic. The Red Republic. And in it, Hislop argued that the Jesuits and the papacy were developing socialism as a weapon against their enemies in the next generation. Now, of course, Hislop was big into teaching Bible prophecy. And so he relates the Vatican and the papacy and communism as being this scarlet colored beast that shows up in the book of Revelation. You know, the woman riding the scarlet colored beast, the woman being a picture of Rome manipulating this communist world empire.
And scarlet being the color red.
Exactly. And Hislop made no bones about drawing the analogy that communism, which is represented by the color red, that's the reason why, because and when you study globalism is international communism. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
And so here you got Hislop back in 1860. Remember, communism hadn't taken over anything yet. It hadn't gotten control of a country yet. You see what I'm saying? Marx published the Communist Manifesto 1848. So here you are in the 1860s, you're probably less than 20 years later, and you have Christian ministers, God-fearing people who are exercising discernment, and they're warning people. There's a whole variety of ministers. I'm going to show them all in this upcoming film, or well, maybe not all of them, but many of them, hopefully. But just present the quotes to people so they can see that we had churchmen warning about this probably 50 to 70 years before communism actually got control of places like Russia and China and then North Korea. And, you know, we've seen this wave of communist takeovers and revolutions in the 20th century. But what people don't realize, I think, is that the groundwork for that was being laid back in the 1800s.
So the mid 1800s, like 40s to 70s, 80s.
Right.
That's going to be American Revolution, or excuse me, American Civil War. That's going to be the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which looking back in history, I say is probably one of the biggest downfalls of America. The biggest uplifts and also one of the biggest downfalls, because that's when we sold the Constitution to bankers. I think what you're saying here is an interesting correlation, especially when we say communism, because, Chris, the problem with the word communism is that it's used so much that people don't actually understand what the rule of communism is. Communism, essentially, if you look back into old-time Rome, that is recreating an empire. And the guy in charge, either the pharaoh or the emperor, that is the head president of every communist country, because he is de facto law and everybody else has to serve under him. And isn't it interesting that in South America, the amount of communist countries, to include Mexico as well, and to include Cuba, that are all communist countries, and they're all Catholic countries.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I've had two speakers that have drawn that. In fact, what was his name? Tim Kaufman, who's who's a former Catholic, now a Protestant evangelical, but he made that comment when I interviewed him. He said, you look at these countries that are being given over, like Venezuela, Cuba, these Latin American countries, they're being given over to socialism or communism at different levels. And yes, they're historically Catholic countries. And it's because the hierarchy basically controls those countries. And what we have to understand, I think, as English-speaking people, we have to understand that not all Catholics necessarily want their countries controlled by the Pope. And historically, Magna Carta was written. If you get the book Rome Behind the Great War by John Kensett, who founded the Protestant Truth Society back in the late 19th century, but he argued that Rome was behind World War I. And he goes over the history of the West and how King John, back in 1214 AD, went and he met with the Pope's ambassador, a guy named Pandulf, and he took the crown off his head and he laid the crown at the feet of the Pope's ambassador, basically saying that the Pope will be able to control England through King John. Well, word of this got back to the leaders, the barons in England, and they were Englishmen. And the thing about Anglo-Saxon people is they don't like the idea of their country being controlled by a foreign leader. And so the barons, now this is 300 years before the Reformation, and they said, no, we don't want the Pope controlling our country. And they knew that the Pope wanted money. He wanted them to pay Peter's pence. And so this is why they got together with Archbishop Stephen Langton and they wrote Magna Carta. And they included within it, no taxation without representation. Okay?
Get up to $4,000 cash back when you take out a new home loan or switch yours to Greater Bank.
Okay? That they were going to have representatives there with the king to prevent the king from fleecing them financially, economically, and sending their money down to the Pope in Rome.
Wow, that's
so. This is why you got Shakespeare at one point. He has a line in the play King John, where it says that no Italian priest shall either tithe nor toll in England.
Wow.
So the English have always been very, very staunchly opposed to the idea of Romanism or popery controlling their country, even back when they were Catholic. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's not just because they became Protestant. The English Reformation
they didn't
goes
like
on
the
from
Pope
there.
anyway.
And I think Magna Carta and then Wycliffe, John Wycliffe, really laid the groundwork for the English Reformation that happened later on. You know, once Luther comes along and he nails his 95 Theses. But these principles were being argued hundreds of years before it happened. And you look at what's happening to us right now in our country. What's happening? We've got people, we've got agents who I argue really work for foreign powers. They work for the Vatican, they work for the European Union, they work for Mexico and China. But they're not really working for us. And they're taking our money and they're just giving billions and billions of dollars away, like to Ukraine and this conflict there, and to all these different countries and causes all over the world. But they won't use those resources where they're really needed here in the United States. And this is what I see, the way I see it, just looking at this, you know, the span of history from Magna Carta in 1215 right up to the present day. In many ways, we're having the same struggle that our ancestors had centuries ago. Does that make sense?
Yes. So one thing that I want to tie together, I think it's interesting what you're saying about Catholics. Once again, we're not I'm not anti-Catholic for the people who have, you know, Catholicism as the religion. That's your own religion. That's your deal. But I think you can draw parallels here to extremism in the Catholic Church, the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
You can draw a lot of parallels. Here, let's hear one. Popes Pius the what was it, 6th and 7th during the Nazi Germany time, In Nazi Germany, the Catholics lived in the south, the Protestants lived in the north.
I did know this.
And even though when the vote for the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler was not a majority by the southern Germany and the Catholics, eventually it was the Enabling Act of 1933 that saw a majority center party, Catholic party of Germans who gave all domestic powers to suppress political opponents to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And they were supported by that. And in fact, it was the Vatican who also was surrounded by fascist Italy, Catholic, communist Italy, that the Nazis went and said, hey, we want your permission before we began Dachau and all the other concentration camps, and was granted permission. And it was also the Vatican who helped in the rat lines to then take all of the remaining Nazis and push them into various different places around the world. But one of the biggest places they sent them was South America, which was, Chris, at that point in time, was a Catholic-based religion country.
Right.
Brazil, Argentina, Peru.
Yeah.
So it's wow, what an interesting correlation. And now sitting in our doorstep on the U.S.-Mexican border, a Catholic country, by the way, ruled by a communist dictatorship.
LA, you didn't take the vaccination?
Which they call a president. And they're pushing through these hordes of people potentially into our country. May 11th will be the first footstep of anywhere between 300,000 and 1.8 million people. Those are the estimates. And law enforcement has no idea what to do. They're panicking. I've been informed of a meeting where they are panicking. They don't know what to do. The Texas governor wants to shut down the border. They may have to shut down other means of transportation until they can export all the brand new Americans into America. Oh, by the way, we can't pay for them. It's going to kill our economy. 2030 is the end of Social Security, announces the Social Security Administration, about a month or two ago? What? We are going to run out of money for Social Security in 2030.
Well, of course.
The American dollar's going to collapse long before 2030.
They're sending it all to Ukraine. But I didn't mean to interrupt. Now you're absolutely right. These connections that you're making with South America and Venezuela and that whole territory, that they smuggled the Nazis out of Europe through what they call the Vatican rat lines. There's even a documentary that I used to talk about years ago, but if you can still find it, they've almost scrubbed it entirely off the internet. But it is called The Last Refuge. And it was actually a short documentary done by Sam Donaldson, very mainstream journalist at the time. And he sat down, interviewed the guys who had discovered this whole thing, and then interviewed one of the former OSS spies who admitted that, yes, the OSS, working with the Vatican and MI6 over in England, that they systematically smuggled some 60,000 Nazi war criminals out of Europe after the war. And many of them went down to South America and Venezuela and so on. But, and why? Because that has been Rome's Jesuit territory. I mean, what we're dealing with on the southern border and into America, you look at the people they put in charge like Mayorkas and others, we're dealing with Latin American Jesuitism. That's what we're dealing with. That's why the current Pope, Bergoglio, is from Latin America, and the Jesuit general, Arturo Sosa, again, from Latin America. And what do they speak? They speak Spanish. Who was the founder of the Jesuit order? Ignatius Loyola, a Spaniard. And the reason they're speaking Spanish is because Spain invaded those territories and took them over. So there's this whole link to the very origins of Jesuitism, and they see themselves as the flagship order for the Catholic Church. even though they ultimately want to destroy historic Catholicism and they want to destroy entirely biblical Christianity. But yes, they want to get control of America. I think there's no question. But what people should understand is that the Jesuits have been on American soil for over 400 years. You had Jesuit missionaries here even before the English colonies, and they were trying to get control of this continent. Well, what happened was the Spanish Armada was destroyed in 1588. That was their great power, the Armada, because you had the Huguenots, the French Protestants, tried to establish a colony down in Florida, in what is modern day Jacksonville. And what happened was they were set upon by the Spanish Armada. They go in there, they defeat them. They defeated the Huguenots, unfortunately. And then they tried to forcibly convert the survivors, who said no, they wouldn't convert. So then they slaughtered them, they massacred them. And that's why you have down there Fort Matanzas. Fort Matanzas, the word Matanzas means massacres.
Wow.
Because that's where they massacred the Protestants. You see what I'm saying? So because of the power of the Spanish Armada, the Protestant territories couldn't colonize the New World because they were intercepted and they were being blockaded and prevented. But then once the Armada was destroyed, that obstacle was out of the way, and that paved the way for England to come in and begin the English colonies.
I have a question for you. When you speak of Ukraine, 72% of Ukraine is Orthodoxy, 9% is Catholic, 2% is Protestant, 2% is other Christian, 3% is labeled as other, 10% consider themselves atheists, and then there's a gray line, 2% that doesn't know what they are. Is Eastern Orthodoxy Christianity the same as Catholicism? Is there a link to the Vatican? Because they seem to be similar, but they consider themselves to be very different.
Yeah, they do. They have very similar doctrines. I'm not as familiar with all of the doctrines of the Eastern Orthodox Church, but they are very similar, like their veneration of Mary, the icons to the various saints and so on. They have a lot of similarities just in terms of what they believe. But there is a historic enmity and hatred between the two churches that goes back centuries and centuries. And when I say hatred, that I believe that's a key element for what's going on in Ukraine right now, because the conflict is between Eastern Ukraine, which is generally Catholic, versus Western Ukraine, which is generally Catholic, versus the Eastern Ukraine, which is where you have the Russian Orthodox, even though they're all Ukrainians. But in the East, they are ethnic Russians who are members of the Orthodox Church.
Right. That whole Dnipro area, the Donbass region, and don't forget that the Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazi link for the Azov Battalion, comes from the Kiev area.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if people don't know this, Ukraine at that point in time during World War II donated the most amount of manpower to the Nazi SS battalions.
Mm-hmm.
They had the largest amount of SS battalions out of the 33 different nations who donated troops. And so that's why you still see a very strong Nazistic, gosh, I don't know how we'd say this, lifestyle almost. I mean, if you look at all the videos that is being showed from the Ukrainian troops, the Sieg Heil salute is all over the place. I've spoken to guys that are special operations who.
All right, I'm pretty sure Trump signed the Noahide laws as well.
Were over there during the very beginning of all this, and they were over there to try and actually rescue children for child trafficking, because that's one of Ukraine's like big money makers is child trafficking. And they said that Nazism everywhere, from the schools to the teenagers, the colleges, mom and pop stores, they're still very much pro Adolf Hitler and the Nazi ideology, which is what we're funding, which is what the Catholic Church at one point in time was an approval of, even though Pius, I think it's 6th and 7th, didn't approve of it in the beginning. They ended up agreeing with it in the end.
Well, Pope Pius XII was Hitler's Pope.
That's right.
Hitler's Pope. And if you get the book Hitler's Pope, Cornwell explains that it was Pacelli, who was the Cardinal Pacelli. He becomes Pius XII. He's the one who brokered the deal with Hitler. And they had the Concordat between the Vatican and Hitler that got, as you mentioned earlier, the Catholic Center Party to give Hitler his absolute totalitarian power.
Right.
That was all through the Vatican. Okay. And this, let me give you a quote now that we show in one of our films, but you can find it in the book, The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris. Paris was a French journalist, and he quoted from a communique from the Vatican to the Spanish dictator Francisco Franco on the day of Hitler's death, when Hitler died. And the Vatican sent a message to Franco and said, quote, Adolf Hitler, son of the Catholic Church, died while defending Christianity. And they declared Hitler to be a martyr. Now, when I first read that in Edmund Paris's book, I thought, wow, that is heavy. And then I stumbled upon a debate with the late Dr. Ian Paisley. Paisley was a very, very prominent guy over in the UK and very involved in the politics over there, but he was a Protestant minister. He preached the gospel relentlessly, but he was also a staunch opponent of Rome. He was known for denouncing the Pope as the Antichrist back in, I think it was 1988 or 98, back when Pope John Paul II came to the European Union. And but Dr. Paisley quoted from Edmund Paris's work and quoted that particular quote in particular. And I mean, scholars over in Europe, Protestants, they know that, yes, of course, the Vatican was behind Hitler. Of course they were. It was the Vatican that first set up ghettos for the Jewish people. Jewish ghetto. You had a Jewish ghetto in Rome for 300 years, all the way until the year 1870. That's where the whole idea of the Jewish ghetto came from. It was the popes that made the Jews wear yellow badges to identify themselves. That didn't come from Hitler. Hitler got that from the popes. You see what I'm saying? So people who knew what was going on, and they knew that history, it's why at the end of World War II, Churchill and Charles de Gaulle said, we've just come to the end of our second 30 years war. The first 30 years war was a struggle against Rome. And so they knew that Rome was behind a lot of the conflict that was going on with World War I and World War II. And what Hitler was trying to do was to become the Holy Roman Emperor. That's why they called it the Third Reich. Because this is a reference to the whole idea of the Holy Roman Empire, and the emperor was the secular power that the Pope would control. So, like when John Hus was burned at the stake, and then the Hussite Wars broke out, what happened was the Pope, Hus is burned at the stake, his followers are outraged, they have these uprisings, and then the Pope orders the Holy Roman Emperor to invade Bohemia and wipe out all the Hussites.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? That was the construct of the Holy Roman Empire. So with the Vatican manipulating Hitler, it's the same relationship. You see what I'm saying? But it was happening in a much more covert manner.
So
Discount by smashing prices with crazy deals on computers. Like 300 of this 15-inch Lenovo notebook thrown out for $11.99.
So why is it that the Vatican now is trying to blend the three major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? Because you see the Vatican invading Protestant Christianity and trying to muddy the water constantly. But at least I don't pay attention to it too much, but I don't see the same type of manipulation for Islam as the Vatican does for Protestants. Why do you think that is, if you have an opinion on that?
Oh, yeah, certainly. Rome's number one enemy is Protestantism. The whole purpose of the founding of the Jesuit order was to launch the Counter-Reformation, which they did in 1540. And so the Counter-Reformation is to overturn the Protestant Reformation. Now, for the average person, people say, okay, well, why should we care about that? Well, the Protestant Reformation brought in freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, the right to bear arms, private property protections, due process, castle doctrine, that you have the right to defend your home. As we're watching these ideas be systematically overturned, as they're trying to overturn free speech by coming up with hate speech laws and saying if you insult Islam, we're going to put you in jail and things like that, or if you misgender somebody, you're not using the right pronoun and this kind of thing. These are all attacks on the fundamental principles of liberty that were won by both word and deed on the fields of battle by our Christian ancestors. And you see what they don't teach in our schools anymore, brother, and this is it's why I made my film, The True Christian History of America, is that the principles of things like Magna Carta and free speech and publishing the Bible and reading the Bible, just having the freedom to read a Bible in your own language. These things weren't just declared by the reformers, they had to be fought for on the field of battle. I mean, Christian armies had to take up arms and go and fight wars for the freedom to preach the gospel. That's what the 30 Years' War was about.
Wow.
And what they've done is in the schools is they've just told everybody, oh, these wars of religion, and, you know, the Catholics and the Protestants fighting, oh, we just don't need to even talk about that. And people don't realize those wars that were fought, they were fighting for all of the liberties that we take for granted today. It wasn't the American Revolution that defined those things. Those things were being defined all the way back in, the 13th century. That's why no taxation without representation. That's Magna Carta. But they wrote.
The guest name's Chris Pinto. I'm going to see he's got a channel on YouTube.
But then the Pope and the King turned their back on it, and then the barons had to take up arms and go to war. They had to fight. You see what I'm saying? When Hus is burned at the stake, they kill a man for preaching the gospel, for preaching the word of God, and the Hussites, they were outraged. They took up arms. They fought. And then they published the 4 Articles of Prague. No. The first article was the free preaching of Holy Scripture. You see what I'm saying? This is what's at stake with globalism, because the globalists, I believe globalism is an instrument of Jesuitism. And I don't just believe that, Doug, just because I happen to be studying the Jesuits right now, but because they themselves admit to it. Somebody sent me a link to a lecture at Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit university, where they had a professor there that they brought in. They said, well, we want this professor to give the history of the Jesuits, okay? You go watch the lecture from this guy. We've got a link to it on our Facebook page. You watch the lecture from this guy, and he openly admits that the Jesuits are the ones who they were the first to develop globalism. And so the lecture is called The Jesuits and Globalism. And he argues that the first 30 Years' War was the attempt by the order.
I've learned more about the Jesuits in the last half hour than I knew in all my life. Gee, says a lot about them.
To bring in a globalist form of government, because they were going to try and control all the countries of Europe. But he says, no, they were unsuccessful. They were defeated by Protestantism. And so that led to the birth of capitalism and the protection of the sovereignty, the national sovereignty of individual countries. And so that led to the Peace of Westphalia. That was the end of it. And what is called the Westphalian World Order. How many people do you know who know what the Westphalian World Order was or is?
Probably very little.
Yeah. But that's, in contrast, the New World Order is really the removal of the Westphalian World Order, because the Westphalian World Order acknowledges the national sovereignty of countries. Anybody can look this up. I mean, it's just basic history, but they don't teach it. So right now, open borders, right? Hey, we're going to open the borders and just flood everybody with all these migrants. That is the rejection of. In fact, when there's an article that I quoted from on Tony Blair, because, you know, Tony Blair is a big-time globalist, and he worked with Bush, who was also a big-time globalist. And Blair is part of the World Economic Forum. He's still active there. And but back when he was Prime Minister of England, the English newspapers had an article at one point, and they said that experts are referring to Mr. Blair as the beginning of the end of the Westphalian World Order. So in other words, Blair, for some reason, which I don't completely understand right now, but I'm still piecing together the parts of the puzzle. But Blair really advanced the mass immigration of Muslims into England and so on. But Blair represented the idea of the beginning of the end of the sovereignty, national sovereignty of countries in Europe, America, probably all over the world, based on what they're planning to do. I mean, they want to have open borders for the entire planet. It appears. Now how they're going to manipulate this beyond where we're at today, I don't know. Right now, it just seems like they are using immigrants from these third world countries into the more developed countries to systematically take them over.
And it would appear that Donald Trump is the new Jan Hus, who is, you know, obviously a reformer in many ways. He's not an isolationist, he's a nationalist, believes in nations' rights and not open borders. Does, in your summations, do you think Trump is an enemy of the Vatican, or is he a puppet like many claim?
Good question.
Well, that's hard to say. I mean, I've gone back and forth on that. I mean, Trump went to Fordham University. Fordham University is a Jesuit institution. At least two of his kids, Ivanka and, who's the, not Don Jr., but his other son, Eric Trump, both went to Georgetown University. Georgetown University, of course, a lot of people go to Georgetown University. I always tell people, just because somebody went to a Jesuit institution doesn't necessarily mean that they are a Jesuit. And I said that for years before Trump showed up, because I believe it's true. Many people are, you know, they're conditioned by the order and their way of thinking when they are in those institutions. But there's like 28 Jesuit colleges and universities in our country. But Georgetown is the most influential. I believe it's the most politically influential institution in our country, because it's at Georgetown that they train the spies for the CIA.
Yep.
Through the Edmund Walsh School of Foreign Service. But anybody can look that up.
Yep.
But
True,
where Trump is concerned, see, when Trump started running and he mentioned illegal immigration, which nobody else was talking about. And he's saying, you know, they're rapists and they're murderers and they're not sending us their best and this kind of thing. He said, I'm sure some of them are very nice people. And he goes on, and he's going after illegal immigration based on what I had studied up to that point, where, you know, in Islam, immigration warfare is the hijra.
Culture warfare, yep.
The globalists are using Islamic immigration jihad. And then irredentism, that's Rome's version of immigration warfare, they're using both. They're using irredentism and Hijra, and they're flooding all of these countries and trying to take them over.
Brother, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. We're about to run out of time. I want to have you back on so that we can get back into this, because
Okay.
we're just peeling off the second layer of this onion.
Yeah.
And I'll give you 2 minutes. What would you say is the most pressing thing that's going on right now that the Jesuits are trying, and where can people find all of your information at?
That's a good question.
Well, I would say that, you know, to me, the number one issue, because it's the number one threat to the gospel, is the ecumenical movement, both theologically and politically. Theologically, because it denies that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no man comes unto the Father but by him, and that Christianity is the only true religion, which our ancestors had always believed. So ecumenism denies that and tries to blend Christianity in with Islam and Hinduism and all these pagan belief systems. But the politics of ecumenism then becomes, they say, and this began with Vatican II, they make that declaration, and then they say, well, because Christianity is the same as Islam, now we have to have Muslims running for office. We have to have Muslims in Congress. We have to have Muslim mayors, and they have to control the politics of the Christian world, or what had always been considered the Christian world. You see what I'm saying? So this is advancing politically the enemies of Christianity, the historic enemies of Christianity. So it's a form of invading our country and all the countries of the West, because ours is not the only one going through this. It's a form of invasion that's very systematic, it's very stealthy, it's deceptive, but at the same time, they don't have to fire a shot. You know, they don't have to actually raise up an actual army. Their army is this immigration system that they're, you know, infiltrating us with. So I think that's the number one issue. One, because of the gospel, and two, politically, it could lead to the disempowerment of Christianity in America and the Western world. And why is that important? Well, go look at the communist and the Muslim countries, and how are they run? Do they operate on the principles of freedom?
And not just that, the Pope is pretty much a socialist as well. We know that.
In my opinion, no, they don't. No, they don't. Christianity and God's law in the Bible is where the principles of liberty are taken from. So that's what I think is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now to my website, if you want to go, or are you going to ask me a question?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've got two main websites. One, we have our film site, which is at adullamfilms.com, ADULLAM films, like the cave Adullam in the Old Testament. Adullamfilms.com, where you can see our documentaries. And then our radio website is noiseofthunderradio.com, noiseofthunderradio.com. And we have our weekly radio show, our podcast. So those are my thoughts, brother.
Well, I strongly agree with just about everything you said. I can't find a reason not to. As usual, Chris, when you and I start to have conversations, I have a pad and pen, and my pages keep getting filled up. You know, and I'll post a lot of the stuff that you mentioned in here in the description below, so people can go out and look it up. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, get some of his DVDs while you can, and educate.
Okay, guys, I'm bailing. See you tomorrow. God bless.